Good? Okay. All right. They tell me we're good. All right, folks. It begins this way. Adequate notice of this November the 14th, 2019 meeting.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear back there? All right, we're gonna boost it up a little bit for you. You want to try and get more amp out of it? We'll start when you can hear. Hang on. Is that any better back there yet? Yes. Better? Yes. Joe, it's better. Leave it alone. Thank you. Adequate notice of this November the 14th, 2019 meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and agenda of the meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building at 1000 Route 10, Township of Hanover, and by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agendas to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, Hanover Eagle, and by filing same with Township Clerk. Mr. Administrator, roll call.
Committee Man Gallagher.
Here.
Committee Man Sharmaska. Committee Man Mahalka.
Here.
Committee Man Cahill.
Here.
And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
5 members in attendance, sir.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, would you all please rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance to our flag? Remain standing, please, for a prayer afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all of the people of Hanover Township. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't me. You all right with that? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have quite an agenda tonight. As you all know, you're all here to be able to ask your questions, hear statements, make statements, etc. And we want to do this in a most orderly manner, and we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to make their comments heard and to address the Township Committee. I'm going to read a few rules of the road that we'd like to employ tonight, some of which we have used in the past, and we continue to use them. We do have a 4-minute rule. If you want to make a statement, please think about your comments. You can make a statement from that podium. We're going to allow 4 minutes for a statement. If you do address the podium, you'll be recognized. Please give us your name and address for the record. All of the statements and comments you made will be recorded for the record. And as you know, this particular session here tonight is also being videoed for future reference. On that note, at the same time, when we do have a speaker at the podium, if there is a second speaker and it's a redundant question or redundant statement, I'm going to ask you to relieve the podium. I'm not trying to silence everyone. I'm trying to give everyone an opportunity to speak. In doing that, the chair and members of the governing body in this response to questions already answered by a previous speaker may not be answered in that. Finally, if you have these wonderful cell phones, your iPhone, etc., please turn them on, turn them to air, please turn them off or turn them to aircraft zone so that they're not ringing during this session. On that note, we have in our format, what do you want to do? Okay, that's exactly what, yeah. Exactly. Generally, so you don't want to open. We're not going to open yet.
No,
all right. Generally, the way this works for those of us who have not attended township meetings in the past, we open the meeting to the public and at the front of the meeting, and then we again open the meeting to the public at the close of the meeting. So you have 2 opportunities to speak and address the committee on that note. But in this format that we're going to do tonight, you're going to see a presentation. from our township attorney up on these screens right here. He's going to give a presentation with an overview pretty much of the ordinances that are before us tonight and discussions that the Township Committee just had and what their action will be tonight on those ordinances. So on that note, Fred, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Fred Simmerow, counsel for the Township Committee. Fred?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Again, my name is Fred Semro. I'm the Township Attorney. With me is Ed Sinickas. He's a licensed professional planner who's worked on quite a bit of the affordable housing plan. His firm, Burgess & Associate for Hanover Township. What I first want to do at the direction of the Township Committee is advise everybody that there's 5 ordinances tonight that are on that relate to rezoning of properties. And for reasons that we discussed from a standpoint of timing and providing additional time to the public, and also to perhaps make a minor change to one of the AH overlays, which we'll get to. It's my understanding tonight that the governing body is not going to act on those ordinances. They're going to actually turn and withdraw those ordinances for the rezoning. There's 5 of them. It's Ordinance 43, 2019, 44, 2019, 45, 2019, 46, 2019. They're the rezoning ordinances, the overlay, and also Ordinance 50, 2019. Notwithstanding that, the governing body tonight will open to the public for any comments about the ordinance, to hear any concerns from the public. But understand that they're not going to act on the ordinances this evening. So I think that's an important aspect of what's going to happen tonight. Secondly, and again, we want to just talk about the overlay zones, the AH overlay zones. So myself and Mr. Sinickas are just going to give you some information about these zones and how we got here as a township. So
Can I ask a question? You're not going to vote tonight? You're going to carry it for another night?
No, the governing body is going to withdraw the ordinance tonight and reintroduce it and start again and have another public hearing at a later date. But it'll hear all the comments from the public tonight. But with the understanding, they're not going to make a decision tonight and vote, move the ordinance. They're just going to have the public hearing and then withdraw the ordinance and start again and have a final adoption at a later date in December, which will be announced this evening.
Why is that?
Because, again, from a standpoint of giving the public the full opportunity to have notice of the actual ordinance and to have an opportunity to hear the public tonight and the public's comments, and also to explain these ordinances. And one of the ordinances, the governing body is trying to seek to make a minor change to the ordinance, and I'll get to that, which one. But that's the basis for this evening to go forward, but only from a standpoint of public input. And although the ordinances were duly advertised, in order to be extremely cautious about giving the public an opportunity to be heard, it's the governing body's decision that we would then withdraw the ordinances and start again and move forward. So there wouldn't be a decision tonight to adopt the ordinance. So how is the AH zoning ordinance related to the affordable housing plan? There's 2 aspects in an affordable housing plan which every municipality, if you want to have protection from builders' remedy suits, must comply with. You have to have certain properties with what's called a realistic development potential, that has to be developed in your plan. That has to be what they call shovel-ready. And then there's an unmet need. That's sort of the B team. It doesn't have to be developed. That's, the township gives an opportunity. If it doesn't get developed, it's not a loss of affordable housing credits to the municipality. Those are the two groups. So with respect to the realistic development potential, the town's obligation in the third round from 2000 to 2025, that was ordered by the special master for all of the participating municipalities in Morris County, was 975 affordable housing units. So if you take that and multiply it by 5, you can just imagine how many residential units that a special master had ordered Hanover Township and other communities as their obligation to meet if you wanted to have third round compliance with affordable housing. In Hanover's case, just go back, Rob, for 1 second. Okay. In Hanover's case, there was a settlement that called for projects such as Pine Plaza and River Park. They were going to be the RDP units, the 550 units. The settlement gave the township a reduction from the 975 with fair share housing, and it was approved by the court, to only having to meet 550 units for the RDP. But that B team, that unmet need, that 425 units that doesn't have to be built, but you have to at least have an opportunity for those units to be built, that's what the 425 is about, and that's what these overlays are about. So for the township settlement for the 550, there's projects that will be developed. There's Airport Road, there's River Park, Pine Plaza. There's projects that have already been developed over the past 20 years that the township received credit for. That's the 550. The unmet need, the rest of that, the sort of the secondary projects, the next screen, would be these other projects such as Whippany Village. There's some Care 1 units we received credit for. The township received credit for existing controls. If there were, say, townhouse associations that had affordable housing controls, the township had the right to elect to extend those controls and get credit for it. So it did. It got 137 credits. That's no new units. That's just an extension of those affordable units for the next round. For those, for example, a property that already had affordable housing controls, it was extended now through the next round for 30 years. And then there's these two overlay zones. And every town has to address an overlay if you're going to settle these cases under the unmet need. The first overlay zone is 30 acres. And Ed, do you want to just give a little background to this area?
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? A little bit taller here. What the first zone is that we're going to address is the AH2 overlay zone. It's in block 8503, lots 3, 4, and 7. Many of you may know this tract. It's along Route 511, Parsippany Road. That's what you're seeing on the left-hand side of the image. What you're also seeing in this image is an overlay of the environmental features or environmental restrictions of the property. There is a stream, there are a series of wetlands and wetland complexes, as well as wetland buffers that are shown in gray, sort of a cloud pattern around the outer wetlands. But in addition to that, the tract is also developed with two other components. There is an existing distribution facility with trucking that occurs, but also a car salvage yard as well on that same property. The property itself currently is in the R40 zone, residential zoning for single family. It does have these non-conforming towing and storage uses on them. The overlay zone would permit an option for a developer to build age-restricted multifamily housing on the property. The overall density would be 11 units to the acre. When you look at the overall tract and you compute just the area of the tract, it's up to about 330 units could be built on that property with 11 units to the acre. With a 20% set aside, that realizes 66 units of affordable housing that could be potentially built. And the reason why a 20% set-aside is used is that you do need to account for the need for a developer to almost subsidize those units, the affordable housing units, because they're not at market rate. So therefore, they have to have either a density bonus as well as the number of units that are being proposed. And so that is the AH2 overlay zone.
And with respect to the AH2 overlay zone, there's these non-conforming uses. It presently does permit single-family homes, but nowhere near this density. But the property does have, as Mr. Sinicka said, high-tension wires, easement, wetlands, and it's in need of, ideally, the type of use that it's had, an environmental type of, a cleanup of the property. With this zoning, there's, first of all, much of the land has certain hurdles. 10 acres of wetlands, there's already towing and storage for almost 2 acres, 5 acres that's now storage for tractor trailers, there's 6 acres of power lines that would all have to be dealt with for the site. It's a challenged site. And so it would require the senior set-aside, but there are no financial incentives. There are no pilots, there's no agreement, and there is no agreement with the township for acquiring any other properties. It's just for this property. There's no condemnation. There's no other properties that are joined to this tract of land. It is up to a developer to come in, and they would have to clean up the entire site if they were going to develop it. They can't just pick and choose. It would have to take care of the entire cleanup of the property to build. And this site, when it comes to overlay zones, and if you look at other settlements, I think this is the only one in the county that is age restricted completely. It's for senior housing. It's something that the township negotiated because it wanted to have the minimal type of use for residential purposes. It's not that enticing for development because there are no financial incentives. It would have to be cleaned up, and it would be limited. It's all age restricted, no impact on the schools. So that's just more about the property. Again, there's no financial agreement, and there's no developer that has approached the township, and nor did the township approach or seek a developer. And if it doesn't get developed, it doesn't harm the township's plan. You know, for the River Park and Pine Plaza sites, we have to be certain that they get the opportunity to be developed. The overlay zones, we do not. So again, senior only, no impact on school, minimize traffic, minimizes the number of bedrooms, only if they ever reach that point of development. Then we have the other zone. It's the AH3 overlay. Ed, you want to go over that a little bit?
Yes, thank you. The AH3 zone is further down Parsippany Road. Again, you're seeing on the left-hand side, Route 511, Parsippany Road. It is a smaller tract at 16 acres. It's approximately 1 acre is constrained by wetlands. Has some existing residential uses on the property. The overlay zone, like the AH2 zone, would permit multifamily housing, but would be non-age restricted. And the purpose for that is that we were required to have only a certain percentage of our overall number to be age restricted. And that's required by statute, by state law. Every municipality has to comply with that percentage. It's up to 176 total units could be built at a 20% set aside, and that would equate to a 35-unit affordable non-age restricted units being achieved on this property. It would retain the existing underlying R40 zoning under it, and that the access road would be from Parsippany Road specifically. We have a specific requirement in the ordinance that the access be from Parsippany Road.
So again, on this property, no financial incentives. There's no agreement at all that there'd be any condemnation, nor would the township be involved with that, nor is there any pending application for development. Now, some other towns, it's been raised, like, for example, East Hanover. They settled at 7.5 units an acre. Now we're talking about 11. So I think it's important. Every town has different challenges in this affordable housing. There are strengths and weaknesses of these settlements. But, for East Hanover, what suited them was 7.5 units an acre, but their overlay zones, such as the ones we talked about tonight, are 10 and 15 units an acre, and they could generate over 1,300 residential units for their overlay zones, which also, they're not restricted, age restricted. So in the case of Hanover, there's 175 units, if they were ever developed, that would be non-age restricted units in the entire overlay plan. And I want to stress that the Township Committee went back and looked at all of the vacant land within the township and looked at properties that wouldn't be necessarily, you have to have properties to identify to close this gap with fair share housing, but you want properties that it wouldn't develop overnight, and if it ever did, it would develop only if there was a cleanup of the site. And that's why these properties, they were recommended actually by Blaise Blanchow when we looked at other properties to consider this, that perhaps this would suit, that it's not an overnight type of development. It's not shovel ready. And if it doesn't occur, like I said, it's not, you're not violating a settlement. Is this a rezoning approval? Absolutely not. This is an overlay. The property owner would still have to come in with a plan to clean up the entire site, a plan to make sure, to demonstrate it's clean, a plan to demonstrate how they would go ahead and construct these units, notwithstanding wetlands, high tension power lines, whatever, access issues. Now, with respect to the access issues, the A3 overlay that we talked about earlier, the 30-acre tract, we are really locked in. When towns identify properties, you have to get a court special master and fair share housing to agree to any changes. Otherwise, you do whatever you want to do with these properties and you'd lose your right to immunity. But what the township has done is gone back to fair share housing and the special master. And one of the reasons why we wanted to withdraw the ordinances tonight on the AH3 is we've asked, H2, I'm sorry, H2, thank you. On the H2, we have the consent from the special master that we can make it clear that we want access not to be from Wilson Place, we want access to be exhausted from Parsippany Road first, to demonstrate that every effort has been made for access from Parsippany Road and not from Wilson Place. So that's going to be a change ultimately in the ordinance, and it's difficult to get those type of changes, but we've been able to address that at the request of the Township Committee. So overall, the benefits of the settlement provide that other sites that are vacant in the township that aren't necessarily stricken with some of these constraints, the township still retains the right to make zoning decisions, such as the Bear property. Bear has 80 vacant acres of land that's probably very suitable for development. But because the township's complied with its affordable housing obligation, it can make a decision as to what it wants to do with respect to Bear. There's no obligation for residential housing there. I think we've seen from the River Park settlement, River Park is 80 acres as well, give or take. It's the same size. It's a significant type of redevelopment project at River Park that the township can make its own decisions on when it comes to Bear because we've complied with the terms of the settlement. Those are the benefits of complying, and these are the hurdles and the challenges that the township's faced in its affordable housing plan and its settlement. So just to wrap it up and add anything you also want to chime in, but the Township Committee tried to select a site that would require a give back, a cleanup, that wouldn't be necessarily that financial wherewithal to a developer because there's no pilot, there's no enhancements to provide condemnation or any effort on behalf of the township. It's going to be restricted. It's going to have a very high affordable set aside. Most of the time it's 15 to 20%. This is 20%. Builders come in constantly and say that's too high. I can't make a development work at 20%. There's cases in Morris County right now. I can tell you they're haggling with developers because they will not accept 20%. This is 20%. Somebody would have to come in and really be committed to a serious cleanup and address these type of contingencies to ever develop the property. It could take years, but it would take a significant investment into the community in the vicinity of the property. And, that's just the overview as to why those zones, how they've come about. And anything you want to add?
Just to say that, as you were reiterating, is some of the points to consider is that for some of the development to be senior housing is significant in your community, because I'm dealing with many other communities throughout Morris County, Bergen, and others, that they're dealing with much more impact as a result of the amount of school-age children. I'm not trying to say this is a perfect plan. It's very difficult for every community. And that what's important to consider is what we were able to do, number one, bringing down the RDP by looking at our vacant land adjustment, which you may have heard about if you attended some of the other meetings. But yet, in addition to that, is coming up with a plan that shows various options. And if you look at the overall distribution of affordable housing throughout the community, it's fairly well distributed. And the types of units, the types of programs or mechanisms that we're looking to implement in order to make this the best plan possible, even though it does have its impacts.
School impact?
Well, we'll get to a public portion, and everybody can get up and make comments.
Please hold your comments to the public portion, please, and then we can identify you at the podium, and you'll have a better opportunity to be heard.
But again, in closing, we're at the point where these are overlays. These are different type of projects, and we just try to stress that the committee tried to be very careful and keep certain restrictions on the property. But I can tell you as I stand here, there's no other deals. There's no other incentives. There's no other commitment. There's no one's property is going to be condemned. That would have to be an action by the governing body. There's no redevelopment zoning. So there's no condemnation. There's no discussion about a condemnation. A builder or developer would be on their own to address these type of things. There's no financial pilots or incentives as well. So, and there would be, again, a cleanup of the entire property. They can't come in and cherry pick and say, gee, the land near Wilson is the best land. So I'm going to leave my towing or my storage, and I'm going to develop this. The ordinance says no. It requires an entire cleanup. So those are the type of conditions that we've tried to install in this plan. And so I think with that, later on there'll be an opportunity for a public hearing. And again, those ordinances will not be adopted this evening based on my direction from the governing body as to what they said, what they advised they were going to do tonight. But they did want to hear from the public's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Ladies and gentlemen, just a comment. The fire chief informs me that we must clear the entrance and exit to the front door. So if we have people out in the hallway, are there speakers on out in the hallway? Somebody nod ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there.
Can we be heard out there?
Can you guys hear them out there?
No, they cannot.
Speakers on.
All right, does somebody, Chief, you want to?
They can either come all into the room, those doors need to be closed, and that exit needs to be clear.
Are there significant amount of people out in that hallway? All right, we want them to be heard as well. So, but at the same time, getting them into this room.
You have plenty of room to
Bring them in. Bring them forward. All right.
Steven. Let pass this last couple up.
All right. Can we move down and give the folks out in the hallway an opportunity to come in? Thank you. Okay. Also, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to, wait till they can come in. Okay. Are we all here? No? Yeah. We're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to do. We'll have to go with what we got. Yeah. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna do the best we can to continue. All right, the way we are. There is a. If you have not seen the sign-up sheet and you do want to speak tonight, we do have a sign-up sheet. Are there people that have not signed onto the sheet who think they might want to make comments tonight?
I would, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, now, Krista, could you put that out into, we're going to circulate this,
Well, why don't we circulate a second sheet?
or a second sheet?
We're going to
Krista,
circulate a second sheet, if you would, and Krista will approach you and get you to sign that. But again, we want to remind you, we're going to go by the list, the first list that we have. There's a 4-minute rule, so that we ask that everyone be given an opportunity to speak based on the sheet. So we're going to start with this sheet first.
All right, well, before we do that, point of order. Gentlemen, motion to open the floor to the public.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, comment is that you can address the Township Committee from the podium, giving us your name and address for the record. As the administrator says, we will have a 4-minute clock. Please think about your statements. If there's any redundancy or any duplication of statements, you'll be reminded that to relieve. Now, on that note, I'm going to begin with the list that I have in front of me in the order that it was signed. The first speaker, and by the way, if you don't want to continue to speak, you can pass on this or not. John Scagliozzi. John, you want to take the podium? Okay.
My name is John Scagliozzi. I live on 8 Lionel Place. I've been a resident there for almost 60 years. And I live in a neighborhood which is called the Heights. It's probably the most pristine neighborhood in Hanover Township. We have a quiet neighborhood, and we live by the brickyards and by the town pool, and then woods have been our playground for many years, and a lot of people in here for many years. We learned a lot of things there. My concern is the value of my house and the concern of Wilson Place being opened up to traffic. We really don't want that to happen. And we don't want all the traffic and all the buildings. We don't want to look at buildings, behind our houses. It's a quiet neighborhood, and we like it to keep it that way. There is places you can put the entrances, like you said, on Parsippany Road. There's no reason why we should have to open up Wilson Place, which has been a dead end and an easement for, probably for 1,000 years since the brickyards have been there. And I think you guys really, really ought to think about, what you already said. There's nothing in stone, but I think you ought to think about, not opening up Wilson Place. That's my main concern, and the value of my house. When people move in here now, they want to come into Hanover Township, and I'm probably going to be selling my house within 2 years, and this might hurt the value of my house too. And we've always been looking at them woods and all the animals back. We all learned a lot of things back there, and we don't want to lose it. We're here because we stayed in this town because it was a good town. We raised our kids. I worked for the town for 32 years, and everybody in this room has probably lived where I live. We don't want to see it ruined. Like you said, you have other places, River Park, Pine Plaza, Corporate Mailing, all these other places that are going to be built by the developer. I don't want to mention his name, and I think you ought to. I know his name, and I think you ought to, consider, doing there, and if you have to build there where you want to build on Parsippany Road, leaving the Heights alone, leaving Wilson Place alone up there. That's my main concern. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, John. The next speaker on our list is Christopher Miller. Christopher, you here? Good.
Good evening. Christopher Miller, 200 Dorchester Street. I've lived in the township for 51 plus years. Went to high school here. I currently am Deputy Chief of Parsippany Volunteer Ambulance, so my time is delegated to that. So it's hard for me to come to all these meetings. I'm concerned about the overlays, especially the one that affects my house, which is on Dorchester Street. There is no other place to enter that overlay, AH3, other than my street, which means my dead end will no longer be a dead end. You talk about cleanup needed. AH3 has no cleanup. So why are we developing in that section? That's a question. There's wetlands. I know there's a little bit of wetlands in there. It's just very disturbing that this overlay was going to happen. I had no notification of this overlay being put out. I live right at that property line where that's going to happen. Why wasn't I told? It's just, I rebuilt my house so that I could live here the rest of my life. I live on the first floor now because I'm getting older. I'm not getting any younger. So I rebuilt my house so that I can live there. Having 176 potential houses or units built into my street, definitely going to make me move out of town. You know, I don't want to do that. I like volunteering my time. I like living in this town. That's why I'm still here. That's about all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, I think one sidebar comment. My Township Committee cautions me about that. This situation is brought to us by Fair Share Housing. Not just to us, but every community around us. Morris Township, Morris Plains, East Hanover, you name it, what's going on. You see what's happening with the Menon sites. You see what's happening over there in the Park Avenue area with the amount of units that have gone on over at the Allied Chemical site, etc. We're not liking this. None of us on this Township Committee are liking this. Excuse me. All right. And we all want to live here, and we all want to minimize the amount of impact that COA and Fair Share Housing has given on us. We cannot, by law, ignore this, and we're dealing with it like every other community is dealing with it. But having said that, you heard earlier from council as to the amount of units that was negotiated and that is still being looked at for Hanover. Probably the lowest amount of impact of low and moderate units in the area for Hanover. We've tolerated COA since the early 80s when the Mount Laurel decision made it a requirement. We all do not like it. We all must get legislation changed in Trenton. Senator Cody is our representative here, as well as Assemblyman McKeon. Write them, call them, tell them, like every other town is trying to get legislation changed and have the courts support any new legislation that we can to get out from under the COA laws. That's where we are. Having said that, the next speaker is Tim Davey. Tim?
Hi, Tim Daly, 203 Cambridge Street. Good evening, everyone. To my fellow neighbors who were brave enough to speak before me, thank you for your attendance, your passion, your articulated points, and strong arguments. To the committee, I can only imagine how much time and effort goes into running a township and the difficult decisions that must often be made. However, there should always be a clear differentiation between what is good for the township and what is good for the people of this township, and that does not seem to be happening here. As a resident of Cambridge Street, we have grown fond of our quiet cul-de-sac where the only noise is the occasional bark of a dog, child playing, or landscapers. The Berkshire neighborhood as a whole is in transition, with houses being bought and updated or raised and rebuilt. 3 of the 6 homes on our small street were converted from ranches to colonials in the last 8 years, significantly raising their housing values. If you run an MLS search, any property that comes up for the Berkshire section will often off the market within 24 hours, speaking to the attractiveness of the area and the characteristics of the potential home buyers. The problem is that the proposed AH3 overlay will essentially kill all that progress and every reason I bought in this town. You're proposing removing a quiet cul-de-sac and turning it into a complex entrance. You're proposing raising acres and acres of woods at our property's border where I often see folks hike and fish in. Never mind the loss of habitat, which is a sin in of itself. Privacy will be a memory as traffic substantially increases and no buffer or setbacks between properties will exist. This will essentially able to look right into the condo parking lot, and any seclusion my yard had is gone. Ambient noise in the form of traffic, pedestrian, overall background noise caused by construction in new residents. Ambient lighting from the high-density parking lots that will light up our area like a Christmas tree. Say goodbye to your stars at night. And the most discerning thing is the eminent domain piece. You're proposing possibly taking a single-family home, which existed prior to our neighborhood even being built, and whose neighbors can be traced back to the 1800s in our area, and potentially raising their property to build an entrance and parking lot. So that's just unfair in and of itself for a person who has no intention of selling. The more and more I research the issue at hand and how other municipalities are attacking this and protecting their way of lives, leads me to believe the committee fast-tracked this issue without regards for its affected constituents. As of this month, there are mayors and town councils across the state, both across parties, that are warning about forced mass density projects with overwhelming infrastructure, burdening the school systems, and greatly increasing property taxes. That's why over 50 towns so far have passed resolutions calling for a state solution. Why have we not done this? Let's take a look at Cranberry, New Jersey. Since 2017, they've been fighting the state's mandated 900-plus apartment complex. The town ended up developing a housing element and fair share plan, presented it to the Essex County Superior Court for approval of the compliance with its affordable housing obligations to date. They were granted temporary immunity from future builder remedy lawsuits by the court as they work to find out how additional mandatory housing will impact infrastructure, resources, and the costs associated. Also, the rules actually, the Housing Act is actually revised every 10 years, or the potential to be reviewed. Why are we not stalling until that next review period and taking advantage of those potential regulation changes? The best part of this is that the requirement for high-density housing uses a formula from 2015 that anticipates population increase over the next decade in the state of New Jersey. But the problem is the average population has grown less than 1/3% over the last 3 years, and is continued to potential to continue to at least 2025. Excuse me. But high-density developers planned across the state would actually expect population to increase 30%, which is just a fantasy. Where are these people coming from? When it comes down to it, besides rolling over and giving into unrealistic federal requirements, high-density development will force our towns and towns like ours, as well as the state, to further hike our income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, any taxes that can be found to pay for the funding of these new developments. All the while, New Jersey ranking second to New York the last 3 years of those leaving the state and moving elsewhere. We have an opportunity to put our foot down and stand together as a community against this developer and federal mandate. To my neighbors, please do not give up this fight.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I'm told that there's people out in the hallway that would like to speak, but they did not get an opportunity to circulate the speakers list.
We'll get a list of them, and we'll have it. If the door is closed, could they?
The fire company won't let any more people in.
The problem is if we want to call them in. Krista, could you see who was out in the hallway that also
Thank
might
you.
silence? Len, we'll get a list out there. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this point. Okay. Is it Abby Davey?
Abby Daly, 203 Cambridge Street. There's not enough words to express what I want to say right now, but first, to start off, we all stood up for the same reason today, and I hope we can end the evening the same way. I echo everything everyone has said, and I hope everyone echoes everything I said. It sounds to me like this is a poorly thought out idea, and it's clear who it's supposed to benefit, the developer. We should be looking out for the best interests in our current residents and the future of Hanover Township, because great things are not happening in Hanover. My fiance and I moved to Cambridge Street last fall, and we purposely chose the house and neighborhood to raise our family because of the excellent reputation of the town, the privacy, and the quiet cul-de-sac. I love my community, and I hate the thought of being forced out of my own town because of poor town planning. If the construction of this development is approved, it will change the community and my life forever. The suggested proposal for this development directly impacts us all. It impacts the environment of my street, my neighborhood, my town, and all the reasons why I moved here. Did the town not feel obligated to inform those impacted by this? Because by chance, I found out from a concerned neighbor, and tonight is my only opportunity to be speaking up. Connection for the pass-through into the neighborhoods should not even be an option. Who's going to pay for a widening of the streets, the addition of sidewalks, additional streetlights, and who will pay for the decrease in the property value due to this? Will you? And most importantly, will you guys take responsible for putting our children and ourselves at risk by increasing the opportunity to hazard and traffic accidents? And when those accidents do happen, because they will, do we have the resources, additional police officers, the ambulances, because if I recall, we don't have a town ambulance at the moment. So I really hope you're taking into consideration the impact this has. Now, I don't want to be selfish and say we can't do anything with this land, because that's not reality and that's not fair. But I'm asking you to hear us, work with us as a community to find a solution. There are alternatives out there. The town can purchase the land and build a park or build small singular houses. There's one thing most of us agree on, everybody in this room, and that is maintaining the suburban feel Hanover Township has. This development will remove that from us, so please don't let that happen. Please hear us and consider us what you stand for in your role. I respect that you will make the right decision for all of us in the room and the overall well-being of Hanover Township.
Thank you. Nancy Bergamasco?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes,
Oh,
Nancy.
there. Good.
I knew I was next.
Give us your name and give us your address, Nancy.
Nancy Bergamasco, 85 Reynolds Avenue. As I look around the room, I see originally over 100 people here. Is there anyone here in this room right now who feels any development in that area would be a good idea? I don't see any hands. I live on Reynolds. The easement by the ponds are my backyard. I take my dog, I take my children back there, we take hikes. I don't want to look in my backyard either and see homes. I know there's wetlands back there. My husband's a surveyor. He's pointing them out to me. I don't want any of that ruined. You know, the ponds have been there a long time. We need to protect our natural resources. My next concern is the traffic. If I had had a way to screenshot or blow up the picture I took this morning at 8:30, I stood on the corner of Howell walking my dog to a steady stream of traffic coming down Reynolds Avenue. And it's not townspeople, it's coming from Parsippany. When I mentioned that before to the town, okay, because there were houses going in off Jefferson, and I was helping to try to fight those houses behind the Mahalcos because of the traffic on Jefferson, I was told, oh, there's nothing we can do about the traffic coming through the town. Okay, then we should eliminate some of the extra traffic coming into our town. It often takes me 5 minutes to back out of my driveway, and I can see B Meadow School. I know what traffic is coming from the school and what traffic is coming from beyond, because I also drive to Parsippany for work every day. Any amount of homes. My other concern was originally the schools, so fine, if it's senior housing, you're going to get 2 adults times 176. I'm going to round up to 360 more cars on every one of our roads that is already overcrowded. I can't even imagine right now my daughter, who's in 6th grade, trying to get to high school through the traffic that's going to come up in the buildings that are going next to Quick Check. It takes my older daughter 20 minutes. So by the time these people have children and you've added all these new developments, I understand it's fair housing, I understand sometimes it's mandated, there's not much you can do about it. How long is it going to take our kids to get to school? A 45-minute ride down Parsippany Road because you have all the UPS trucks, you have all the traffic from Parsippany. Now you've got the seniors going out to go grocery shopping, you've got the rest of town going to work, you've got everyone cutting through town. That is just the next issue that has to be addressed. There's no one here supporting this to save our town, because when I moved in 13 years ago, maybe for the first 5 or 6 years, I didn't pay attention to the traffic. My kids were little, I wasn't going that far. But this is what we as younger adults in this town are thinking of. I'm thinking of in 10 years when my kids are done with school, do I want to stay? Do I want to live in a town where I can't drive through town anymore? Where I can't get to the center of town, which isn't even a center anymore, but I can't cut through there to go anywhere? I mean, that's why I'm happy I work in Parsippany. I go the other way, opposite the traffic every day. I don't have to deal with it, but I have to see it to get out of my driveway every day. My younger daughter likes to ride her bike around town. If the traffic continues, I'm going to tell her no. I mean, granted, she stays between Bay Meadow, she rides up the Memorial, she sees her other friends, but it scares me now that I would not have been scared for my older daughter to cross the street, which she does for the bus, to take her bike and ride up and down the streets in our area. You add any more amount of houses onto what we have, there's going to be 2 cars for every house. People don't buy a $500,000 house that live alone. It just doesn't happen. You're buying it because you have kids. You're buying it because you want to live in the area for 20, 30 years. So please, I just beg the Township Committee, I know many of you are already dealing with the traffic, to please consider the children of the future and how it's going to impact them and the people that live here. And then people are going to stop coming. And our town should just not be overdeveloped and overcrowded. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment, and we fully hear you on the, Nancy, on the traffic issue. Hanover Township is not standing still on that. We have some legislation that we're proposing down at the League of Municipalities. Deputy Mayor Farrell Mosca has authored some language regarding our concerns with the traffic impact that's going to be brought onto us by this fair share housing. And none of this was taken into consideration by fair share housing. They could care less about all the impacts of traffic, all the impacts of stormwater, all the impacts on our infrastructure. We care about that. We want that to be a factor in determining how many units a township can accept. They could care less. We will be down in Trenton, and we will be down at the League. We will do our very best to get this kind of legislation before our legislators down there. Having said that, William Brunskill, am I pronouncing that right, William?
I think this has been pointed out already, is a business with traffic. This town is practically overrun with traffic already, especially on Parsippany, Reynolds Avenue, Whippany Road, you name it. I don't know how much more this town can tolerate with the pollution from the traffic and everything. That's all I have to say.
That's it. Mila, are you here?
I've asked everything I want to say, well said.
Passing.
Oh, you got, okay, Mila. Okay. Evan Markin, I'm going to mispronounce this.
Give it a shot.
Oh, you have it? Go ahead, Evan. There you go. It's like pronouncing Francioli. They could say 17 different ways, but
I'm not going to try yours. So, good evening, everyone. Evan Markinson, 6 Al-Anon Street. Of course, I echo all the same concerns that our fellow members of the community have expressed. And I think, we've heard people can't come to all the meetings. We've heard, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. I'm in that same pool of people that I'm not as engaged as I should be, and I'm not as aware as I should be. I think it's really important for us to have as much transparency as possible, not even about the immediate plans, but what the future may hold, right? So we've heard some ideas. We say, hey, we've come up with a plan that is, I'm putting words in it now, low risk to develop. But what's that even mean? And then what's that mean next year when there is a proposal? And sorry, we have to accept the proposal because of some other mandate or some other something. So not being aware and informed about these things, I think raises the anxiety and the stress. And the more we know what, and I'm going to use the word master plan, I'm not using that word technically, but the more we understand what the master plan and strategy is, I think the more we can, be informed and engaged in what the right decision is. So that's my piece. Thank you.
No, I understand. It's been very difficult on the community. It's been very difficult, and the Township Committee, all my colleagues on the committee, through this period, have tried in every way to be as transparent as we possibly can. We're criticized that we're not, but let me tell you, we have had special sessions in this public meeting with our attorneys. We have televised most of our meetings and brought it to you on our website. You can see any one of our meetings, by the way, just by going to hanovertownship.com on the website, going down to a date of a meeting, and you can check those out. You'll have, yeah, go ahead, sir.
Many of the minutes, when I try to click and read them, they're just blank pages on the website. I can send you links if you're interested, but some of them on the Township website, I try to look at the minutes for certain past meetings, and they're just blank. So they're not being uploaded properly.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
We didn't know that. Thank you.
I don't want to get off on a tangent. There's so many people that want to speak here, but I mean, our website has been totally redone. We've hired a professional company to redo it. We're trying to put as much information in the site as we possibly can. There's consideration for the township going like other townships on social network, be it the Facebooks, et cetera. Some are using Facebook very effectively right now. Thank you. And so we are going to do our utmost to bring transparency to our community, and I applaud my colleagues for supporting that as well. So having said that, going over to Douglas Eamon. Douglas?
Douglas Eamon, 48 Washington Ave. First want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know myself and a couple other people were really trying to get a large turnout. So I'm happy to see everyone here. Hope that comment didn't take away from my 4 minutes, and if you have me on the timer again this month. So this past weekend, not sure if everyone knows, I did go around and collect signatures for a formal protest petition on the adoption of two of the ordinances, 4309 and 4409, which propose the overlay zones. So I'm happy to report I'd obtained enough signatures that would have required the ordinances to pass with a minimum of 4 votes. I believe now that they're being withdrawn, they'll probably be reintroduced on new numbers, so I apologize if I'm at your door again next month. But I do hope we have the same large turnout next month as well, and that we provide the same feedback next month when the ordinances are reintroduced. So I want to share some thoughts as I went around town trying to collect my signatures. First, I wondered if there would be a difference of opinion based on where someone lived, or maybe their age, or even whether or not they had kids. I didn't really know where people stood. All I knew was what was on Facebook. I really didn't get out there and talk to the people. Maybe if they had a big home with the truck depot in their backyard, hey, maybe they want to see condos instead of a truck depot. Or a junkyard across the street. Maybe they'd be against it too. Maybe they'd rather see the condos instead of a junkyard. I wonder if I'd be pushed away or welcomed with a smile and a thank you for what I was doing. What I learned as I went door to door collecting signatures is that Hanover Township is full of caring and concerned residents. As I spoke with the people, they all had similar concerns, a lot of which are mentioned tonight: traffic, schools, sewer and water management, eliminating open space, and adding an entrance to a potential new development on a quiet street with no sidewalks, i.e. Wilson Place. I was also surprised with how up-to-date a lot of the residents were with COA and the town settlement, which we can partly attribute to the recent information published by our township on the town website. Thank you very much for that. As I spoke with the community, it was clear that regardless of age, race, gender, or income, there was no difference of opinion on this matter. The residents of Hanover want our town council to vote against these ordinances. So while I appreciate your withdrawing them tonight, I respectfully request next month, when they're reintroduced with whatever revisions, that the position is the same. We do not want these ordinances and overlays in place. In addition to the petition, I circulated a Facebook poll to gauge the interest in starting a Concerned Citizens of Hanover group. At last check this afternoon, we had 76 that said yes, they wanted to be involved, only 2 no. Another clear sign where the residents in this township stand. It's clear where the voting public stands on the matter. This isn't a matter of politics, it's a matter of our livelihood. So while the fear of a potentially violating a pending settlement agreement is a risk, it's, in my opinion, based on my interactions with my community, a risk that we should take. With that said, I challenge our planning board and township committee to go back to the drawing board to provide an alternate solution to still comply with the terms of the agreement. There are numerous alternatives that should be explored, I don't believe were explored, and have had the proper studies performed. Since this overlay zone is for future unmet need, it is my opinion the court would be reasonable in providing an extension for us to identify alternate options. Again, it is a future unmet need. Several options could include identifying a more appropriate location for overlay zones, building affordable housing on our own rather than a builder at a 4-to-1 ratio. Nice recommendation by former Mayor Len Ferriello. Starting an affordable housing program with existing rentals in our town. I believe they're doing something similar, I believe, in Cranford. where if homeowners that have rentals, the town will help
Douglas, I'm
support
going to let you, you've had your 4 minutes, but I'm going to let you finish your statement.
Thank you
Go
very
ahead.
much. There will be another public open comment during the ordinances, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. All right. So I'll leave it at that for now. If you're unable to identify an alternate property, then it's my opinion Hanover Township should withdraw from the Fair Share Housing Center settlement following Middletown Township's lead, which, by the way, was supported by their state senator and assemblywoman. I will be back up later.
Thank you, Douglas. Douglas, I'm not trying to be this difficult in this, but if you have suggestions for alternatives to what's before this township committee and what's confronting us, we more than welcome your comments. You can present them to the administrator. You can present them in any which way you wish. But if you have solutions, we want solutions. So,
thank you.
Door is open.
Thank you.
Justin Grant. Is Justin here?
Yes, sir.
Here you go.
My phone died standing here for so long, so my notes that I prepared are unable to be read, but I would like to just make a couple of comments of some of my, everyone can hear me okay? My observations tonight. When the town attorney, I believe that's your title, started these lackluster PowerPoint presentation here, you referenced that the traffic wouldn't be impacted due to senior living. As far as I know, my grandparents still drive their cars to the store. You also mentioned that the word vacant land was used many times. As far as I know, there's people in this room that live on that land, so I wouldn't consider that land vacant by any means. I find that highly disrespectful to propose those words in that manner. I'd like to thank all the people in this room that came tonight that didn't get to kiss their kids goodbye tonight to have to deal with this. My family's been in the town for over 60 years, Cambridge Street, if I didn't mention that. My neighbors have had the property since the 1850s. To target this area of our community, I find it reckless and sad. With that being said, getting more invested in some of the residents in the town, speaking to them over the last couple of weeks, I found out that the same developer seems to be the one that consistently gets the job in this town. I find that highly strange considering I'm still on the clock, sir, so thank you. I deal with the government all the time. I'm a salesperson for fire and police equipment, so I know how the government works with RFQs and bids and those processes. It doesn't seem like that's happening in this town from what I've seen so far. I've also talked to many residents that have been intimidated by people related to these particular people, which will remain unnamed for my own security. But with that being said, I want to thank everyone, the residents of this town, for taking the time to come here tonight to view their words. Thank you.
Michael Casal. Michael, you here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone hear me? Mike Casal, 120 Wilson Place. I lived in Hanover. I feel like a newbie. I've only been here for less than 10 years. And prior to Hanover Township, I lived in areas of the state where other overlay zones in similar fashion were created in adjacent wetlands, so I have firsthand experience of, and subsequently had deleterious effects on nearby residences when these developments were created. The main concern, chief concern that I have is that the overlay zone will cause significant change to any impervious surfaces, thereby causing stormwater runoff into adjacent residential properties, resulting in damages to existing roads and residential homes. Like I said, I know this firsthand. Most notably, the anticipated entrance into the proposed development vis-a-vis Wilson Place is of chief concern. I don't know if you've all had a chance to drive by there after a storm fall. I look at it every day when I come home. But the area after a rainfall has significant stagnant water after a rainfall. The question is, where is that going to go? I understand Council Semrell, I appreciate the fact that there's a strategy around building the development and whether or not the probability of the development will be built. However, in the anticipation of it being built and the variances that can go along with it, I see that as a high risk for the area, for the residents. So I just wanted to point out a couple other areas. According to the latest FEMA flood map that's available, the area due north of the zone in question is stated as Zone A, which is base flood elevations not yet determined. From my perspective, it should be well determined, or we should at least have some variation or some information from FEMA around this before these zones were even put into the proposed settlement as part of COA. I feel that's a bit of a fly in the ointment, for lack of a better term. The other point I wanted to make was that on Parsippany Road, there's no curb or storm drains at all up on the hill. So the drainage relative to that would definitely cause some deleterious effects around stormwater damage if they were to be touched. And so without an in-depth study and analysis to be agreeing to these zones being an overlay zone, to me seems a bit reckless and cavalier. The last thing I'll say is that from my perspective here, living in the town, it's been quite refreshing to be in a town that's suburban and quiet and peaceful. And so I'll echo everyone else on that fact. That's all I have.
Frank Sabatino. Frank, you here?
Frank Sabatino, 6 Baldwin Court. First of all, I think your committee has a terrible job ahead of you. Second, you expected a large turnout tonight. I would suggest that the next meeting should be held in a school auditorium or something, rather than having people standing all over the place like this. What I haven't heard anything about is what the impact is going to be on taxes for the Hanover Township. You know, you're talking about 11 units per acre.
Frank, raise that microphone up to you a little bit more. Thanks, we could hear you back here.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
I'm glad to hear that.
But there you go.
All right, you propose 11 units per acre. That means that it's condos and a multi-story building. You know, it's not specific little units, but there's studios, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom. What happens to the police department, the fire department? Right now we have volunteer fire department. I expect you're going to have a paid fire department, and that's going to impact every one of us one way or the other by taxes. I have not heard one iota talked about that. Is it going to go up 5%, 10%? I don't think there's a feel for it. I haven't heard that addressed at all, and I think that's very important to all of us, especially the one that going to AH2. There's one entrance on Parsippany Road. How are you going to get into that place? If there's fires, how are you going to get in there? The policemen, how are you going to get in there? You know, it's a real problem. It's going to be a bottleneck, no matter what happens. And that's it.
Thanks, Frank. Frank, all I can say to you is that you're echoing all the concerns that we on the Township Committee have been discussing for the last year and a half, truly with the impact.
So why are we fighting that question? 2 people asked that question.
Please wait till you're recognized. If you're on the sheet, sir, you will be recognized. Mr. Jason, I can't pronounce that. Is it? I could. Jason Seeker. Jason, are you here? Go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, please be recognized from the podium, or we're just going to have absolute pandemonium here.
Jason Seeker.
Thank you, Jason. Go ahead.
I've been a 47-year resident of Whippany. I was born on Baldwin Court, and I currently live at 36 Berkshire Street. Went to school here, played football here, you know, and decided to raise my children here as well. So this Whippany, and I've been involved with many other towns in my life, and Whippany has really stood out and has one of the best reputations in the state of New Jersey for doing the right thing for its residents, for doing the right thing for the businesses that choose to be here. And, you know, When I was away this past weekend and I saw the flyer that was left in my mailbox, and a lot of people have uttered the same thing, is that we feel like we didn't get proper notification. So we're just learning about this a couple of days ago, and that's not a lot of time. And after hearing the town attorneys and hearing what you guys are trying to do, I see what you're trying to do, and I know you're trying to make it hard for that 2 tracks to be developed. But if that is the case, make it harder. Why does the density have to be 11 an acre? Bring it down to 7 like East Hanover. Bring it down to 6.5. Make it to the point where it doesn't make any sense for a developer to come. And they won't. COA, for the most part, is a money-losing operation for anyone that goes and tries to undertake that. They're only doing it to get the market rate apartments or condos or whatever they decide to build. But you guys have the chance now to change the zoning, to put on height restrictions, put on density restrictions, put on coverage restrictions. Make it to the point where everybody knows Mount Laurel Act and COA. Everybody's got to live with it until it changes. But you guys have the opportunity now to make these plots of land that are within question, to make them unfeasible to develop. Environmentally, those 2 sites are a nightmare. They're going to cost millions of dollars. We all know that. But there's still other things you could do. Density. There's things, and if this does have to go because it's a future need, make it hard enough where nobody in their right mind would ever try to come and develop this land. And you guys have the opportunity here. It's right here in front of you. You could change the density, change the height restriction, change the coverage, change everything you need to do. There's a lot of great wildlife back there. There's a lot of great plants, trees, you name it. And, you hate to see that go. There's less and less of that in the state of New Jersey. We all know that. And this is a good opportunity to keep that intact, keep the wetlands, and keep everything that has made this town great for so many years. I mean, that Bee Meadow Pool area, pond area that's a staple. That is Hanover Township. And some may disagree if you live in other parts, but that is Hanover Township. And that's one of the last pieces and tracts of land in the state, really, that is so preserved, and you can go back there and ride your bikes and walk your kids and do all that. You don't want to change that. We've got plenty of other building areas. You got Eden Lane, you got the other one, you got Morris County Mall.
Yeah.
That could be rezoned. Come on.
Boy, do we have...
There's plenty of areas for color.
Boy, do we have Morris County Mall. Okay. Jason was here. Right here. Wait for that. Maglarzada? Am I pronouncing that right?
Maglarzada Cynic?
Yes, no?
Maglarzada?
Good evening.
Pull that microphone right there, you go.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes. Małgorzata Cynk, 93 Troy Hills Road, Township resident since 2005, so not that long. I wanted to thank everybody for coming here tonight, and all of those really knowledgeable and smart people about the remarks that I feel exactly the same way, and I'm really glad that they put it in those smart words that I wouldn't be able to do that. So, but I just wanted to add that I have children in our public school, so I am very concerned about everything that was being touched tonight. I understand that Council of Affordable Housing and the courts don't really care about the future of small suburban communities because they are not their communities. They don't live there. It's not their lives, but it's our community and it's our lives. And I know that we are obligated to fulfill certain mandates, but I feel that if this town cannot find a better location for those two zones in question, we shouldn't do it. That means we are not we are not capable of handling that, so we should not do it. And I know there's other towns that felt the same way, and they are not going for fulfilling those orders. And we'll see what's going to happen. But I can't imagine putting a development of this size in the middle of the town. Usually, developments of that kind are built on the outskirts of towns. The traffic and everything, and the schools, and all of the impact, like everybody talked about it already. But the fact that if that's the only location that is considered, then I would say no to it. I promised my daughter that I will not let one tree be cut down in this town. And
Thank you. Mark LaCroix. Mark?
Good evening, everybody. Mark LaCroix, 20 Longview Drive, Whippany. I live on the other side of town away from where all this is taking place, but my wife actually brought it to my attention this week. We were not aware of it. We moved into town about 3 years ago. We've been at the B Meadow Pool for the past 3 years. We thoroughly enjoy it. We don't want to see it changed. It's a gem for the town. Should not be disturbed. Should be left as it is for the residents of the town to continue to enjoy it. I'll second all the opinions of everybody that stood here before me and commented. I'm glad to see that everybody's out here. Whoever started the chat that got to my wife's attention, continue it. That's how we all get here and do what we have to do to make a difference in our town and in our state. And however you can get us notified and involved to bring us more to date with what's going on, that would be beneficial to all of us so that we don't all have to suffer in silence. And I don't think anyone should be suffering in silence here, especially if it affects them so closely to these zones that are being created. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, I'm going to pronounce that, Matesh? Matich. Chris, go ahead. Forgive me, folks, I'm reading handwriting. Handwriting? We actually might teach that in school again. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Matisich. I live on 32 Sunset down by Blackbrook. I don't live near the affected area, but I grew up in the woods down there. I first want to thank everyone on the committee for keeping our town an amazing town. The reason I bought my parents' house from them 3 years ago is because I grew up here, and I grew up using the woodlands in this town, exploring, getting away from my parents. Frankly, having woods and a place to go ride bikes with my friends and get into other kind of like problems in the woods kept me off of drugs. I'm not kidding. Our kids, my future kids, the reason I like to live here is so they have a place to go. Those woods around that pond are one of the only places you can go and ride a bike in the dirt off-road, where you can fish, where you can like cook up popcorn or hot dogs or something out there with your dad like I used to do. You can't do that anywhere else. And I don't want to be here right now. I want to be home. I've never come to a township meeting in my whole life. And I find myself here tonight because I'm really upset. I was up on the town site till 4 in the morning researching whatever I could to figure out however this stuff works. I'm here, I'm speaking, even though like my whole body's shivering because I don't normally publicly speak, because I don't want to see one of the few spots of natural woodlands that we have left in town be turned into more condos. Today, I went down Washington Street. People asked me, "Oh, are you Doug?" Because Doug had beat me to the process. He had already canvassed his whole area, telling everybody about this. I started doing the same thing. I don't even live over there. And then I went to the other side. I went to the house that's on AH3. And I talked to the people that are there. There were homes on that property. those people are going to be kicked off of their land, given a small payout of whatever's deemed the assessable value of the land, which is not the true value, and they're going to have nowhere to go. That house is over 100 years old. If anything, it should be labeled as a historic monument in the town and protected. And there's acres of woodlands owned by the people that own those homes there that they've personally protected, which I used to play in as a kid. So I thank them. I don't know if they're here tonight. I also heard rumors that there's a red-tailed hawk preservation in those woods. I know that the Troy Meadows, closer to what Troy Road, has them there. I heard that they were in the Bee Meadow woods as well. That should be investigated because you can't devastate those woodlands if that's the case. Now, I understand that the state is requiring certain things to be built. I think we shouldn't give up people's private homes and woodlands to meet it. I think we should build on dirt. Build in the Eden Lane area. It's huge. Build... Well, okay. I'm saying...
We have some neighbors from Eden Lane, but don't ignore them. Go ahead.
Sorry. There are currently places that are dirt and can be built on without the destruction of natural habitat that's been there longer than any of us have ever been alive. And I'm a little worried about how quickly the timeline is on all of this development proceedings, because I believe the COH deadlines are like 2025 or something, and things seem to be happening really quickly, like on the Facebook page. It's like every week is a new thing. Can I have one more minute just to finish up? Anybody mind?
You sum up. You could sum up.
Thank you. I know one of the co-owners of Nico's, which is one of the nicest restaurants in town, and Nico's was recently deemed as in need of condemnation. It's one of the nicest restaurants.
No. But go ahead.
I know it was withdrawn, but it shouldn't have been on there in the first place. And I find that, or I'm feeling that there's a lot of speed being taken here. And I'd like to ask all of you sitting at the head table, you guys are here as representatives of us. We're the people. You represent us. I feel that you guys are representing the state and representing development rather than the people, because you're saying we have to do this, we're being forced to do this. I'm asking you guys to please reconsider, please fight the state, follow the steps that Doug had outlined earlier on how to go about that, save the few wooded areas that we have, and stand up for us, not for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Len Furiello.
Thank you. I'm really angry. I really am. I'm angry because I've watched this town go from a rural town to a suburban town, and now it's going to be an urban town. And I'm angry about it. And I'm asking you, our elected officials, elected by we the people, to take a stand against the state-mandated our township zoning. Just like America revolted against the king to make America, Hanover has to take a stand and revolt against the state-mandated affordable housing. Why? Because it really can't get any worse than the kind of development and growth these zoning ordinances will create. It really can't. If it means defaulting on a settlement, then so be it. I respect all of you. I'm sure you know a lot more than we do about this matter, and I respect the township attorney. Yet despite how favorable you want to paint this situation, you've been beaten down by the courts and intimidated by the courts. And from where I stand, on the outside looking in, you will be making a huge mistake to vote for all these zoning overlays that will allow all this future overdevelopment and high-density housing in Whippany. Don't let history look back on the Township Committee of 2019 as a committee that zoned Hanover into a crowded urban community and high-rise apartment houses. Many of you were elected under the platform to preserve and protect the character of our town. By law, New Jersey municipalities have home rule. Take a stand. Stop thinking about if we do this and if we don't do that. Stop thinking if we don't zone for high-density housing, it could be worse. Stand in the possibility that if we fight for our rights and control our zoning, our population growth, our traffic, and our building densities of our township, it could turn out better. If the courts need to see overlay zones, then zone the swamp over at Black Meadows by the airport, or zone the swamp behind the sewage treatment plant, or the swamp at Lee Meadows, places that are vacant but can't be developed. And if the township really thinks we need more affordable housing, then let's find a way to build it without using the builder's remedy. Instead of asking builders to build affordable housing, building 4 market houses in exchange for every affordable housing unit, let's establish a housing commission and find grants and tax the state and build affordable housing 1 for 1, not 5 for 1. I really think you should take a stand behind your citizens. If I were sitting up there and the residents elected me and did not want this, I would vote no. That's the way our system of democracy is designed to work. Not to think that you know better than the residents you were elected to represent, but to represent the will of the residents you serve. Those of you who promised us you would protect our township from high-density zoning and overdevelopment, when the time comes to vote, I'm asking you to vote no. Inform the state court that your citizens are rebelling. I think we can do better than this. I'll stake my life on it, and I'll help in any way I can. We can do better than this. And I'm asking you, I don't even think you should reintroduce this, but you're gonna, and I'm asking you to vote no when the time comes. Thank you.
Miss Baird, Terry Baird.
Good evening, everyone. Terry Baird, 180 Parsippany Road in the Whippany section of Hanover. I'd like to thank everybody in this room for coming in and supporting the area and all the people that are in this area. And you all have very wonderful things to say, and it's very heartwarming. I have some questions, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to answer them. At this time, when you reintroduce these overlay ordinances, or you want to call them zoning overlays, at any time later than that, would you be able to declare these areas as an area in need of redevelopment?
I'll let council answer that, but if it meets criteria, and Fred, you can address that.
I think Mr. Sneak.
If you've read any of the other area in need of redevelopment, practically every home in Hanover could be declared an area in need.
Do you want to answer those questions now, or you want to do it all at once?
You might get confused.
Answer Ms. Baird's question, yeah.
Okay,
please.
Absolutely. As far as an area in need redevelopment, there's specific statutory criteria that has to be met.
I understand that, but can it be done?
No,
I mean, if it meets the need, so-called need, can these 2 overlay zones be declared an area in need of redevelopment?
Now you're saying if it meets the need of affordable housing? Was
if
that
it
your
meets
question?
the need of the criteria,
No.
just like
Well,
every
if it meets
housing.
the need of the criteria, yes. But
Okay, that's
it
all I
would
wanna
have to
know.
be an action of the council.
Right, it has to
in
be
order
an
for
action.
them to initiate the idea.
Right.
And so therefore, there would be that public process.
And then at that public process, they would have the ability to declare it an area of need of redevelopment with condemnation?
If it made sense.
If it made sense at the time.
The statute is available to any municipality.
Right. And in 2025, when the unmet need is not met, how does that force the hand of the town or the court saying, well, here you have these overlay zones, now can the court come in and say, you need to take these overlay zones?
No. To the best of my knowledge, that's never been the case. It's only been the burden to the municipalities to rezone, not to build, unless they're proposing, as you heard earlier, 100% affordable housing development. That's where, if you institute a program such as that, you are obligated due to timelines to build that affordable housing.
Okay. And I would also like to know, there's area in between, and there's farmland between the two areas in these affordable housing overlay zones. Would that be classified, if it were to be declared an area in need of redevelopment at a later time, could that be classified as a Section 3?
A Section 3 under the rules?
Yes.
I would have to look at the property. I really couldn't answer that question.
Just by virtue, the Section 3, just like Nico's became a part of the Pine Plaza.
I really couldn't say. I would have to. I really can't answer that question without more information. I'm sorry.
About the notice, I find that your noticing of, or the lack of noticing of people, to be rather suspicious, because on October 10th, you put these up for these ordinances were presented, and then, but the re-exam of the master plan hadn't been approved yet by the planning board. So that's like putting the cart before the horse. And then all of a sudden, we can't be noticed because you have a re-exam of the master plan. So on November 14th, today, we have an open hearing, and none of us have been notified. And if it hadn't been for me looking through the paper and finding a little legal ad, nobody in this room would know anything, because the town lacks transparency. Everything is after the fact. They don't lay anything out about what's going forward. And I know that Jim Nyhart has stood here in the same podium and said the same thing, that the town is not transparent. You may say you're transparent. You said about them laying out a plan so that people knew what to expect.
I said that I think that given how things are changing with social media,
how fast,
more involved, that the town needs to really think about getting in front of this and being more transparent than, one, is legally necessary, and two, that they've done in the past. I did not say that they weren't being transparent. I suggested they be more transparent than they had been.
Correct. I'm sorry if I'm a little upset, so my speech isn't as good as it possibly could be.
I just wanted to correct you for the record.
Thank you. So, like I said, I find it very disheartening, and with the fact that all of our properties have been approached by a certain builder, I feel like there is a fox in the hen house, and that, and now lo and behold, these very same properties are in an overlay zone. So it's very suspicious to me. To me, it doesn't make the town look very good. And like I said, I just feel as though there's a fox in the hen house, and I'll use my old farm terms for that. Thank you very much.
I'm going to reserve comment on a few of your remarks, Terry. Regarding transparency, you've done a yeoman job of attending all of our meetings, and I thank you. Be it Planning Board, be it Board of Adjustment, Board of Health, Recreation, etc., you're there, and that's fine. And you've heard all the comments, you've opened all the minutes, you've gotten all the information that you possibly need, and then you go on Facebook, and you have an obligation, if you're going to be an advocate for Hanover Township, to present facts unemotionally and bring them forward. But when you do things like this, with innuendo, to myself, my colleagues, etc., it undermines the credibility of this committee and what we're trying to do here. So I take offense to that. But having said that, the next speaker is Judy Arati. Judy?
I have a few questions.
Judy, put the microphone up.
Sorry about that. And my first would be to Fred Samrow. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. Fred, we're under an obligation for COA to meet our COA mandate, correct?
Yes.
And that's what I hear all the time. We have to meet the mandate. We have to meet the mandate. Does the COA mandate require us to have these two particular pieces of property as overlay zones? These
doesn't
particular
require-
pieces of property?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But Judy, I just want to say. No, that's not fair, but it's accurate. So.
Okay, thank you. So if these two properties don't have to be the COA overlay zones, was there a study done to determine the pieces of property in town that were suitable for overlay zones? Does anybody know that answer?
To answer your question, we're going to have the planner answer you, who did most of the
planning.
consulting
So there
work.
is a study. You studied all the areas in town, and that was the two best spots to put the overlay zones.
There are various studies being done of all the vacant parcels or parcels that may have development potential. And if, as one public member mentioned earlier, is that there's a house on the property. It was understood that there's a house on the property, but that the property was oversized. And that's where, when we're involved with Fair Share Housing Center, they're looking at all these oversized parcels and saying, well, what about this site? What about that site? And so we did look at all the other various locations, and these two came to the surface as sites that they felt were appropriate to rezone, as well as we did.
Now, when I was on the Township Committee, we were going to do an overlay zone over by the Wegmans, McCallie. Hanover has a big parcel of land over there. Was that considered?
I guess I can't speak to that specifically. I wasn't involved in all the details, so
I just wondered if there was a study that we could look at that would give us some idea of why you picked these two pieces of property. Now, another thing is the ordinances and the introduction. The ordinances are going to be defeated tonight because of various reasons, mentioned and not mentioned. So they're going to be defeated tonight, but they do not have to be introduced. Are they going to be introduced tonight?
On the ordinance.
These same ordinances with little tweaks.
Well, I think that's something
The
that...
administrator.
I think we're going to go into executive session following the public speaking. Because...
Yeah, okay.
Don't panic. Don't panic.
So that we have discussion based on all the comments that are brought forth by the public tonight. So that will be heard after everyone is heard. Then we're going to adjourn, recess, so that we can consider all these comments.
Okay, so effectively what's going to happen is they're going to listen to all of us, go in the back, and if they come back out and introduce the same ordinances with a couple of tweaks, it means they've listened to you, but they're going ahead anyway. So the next time when it's for acceptance, what can I say?
But I don't think you should make that assumption until the governing body...
Well, we'll see if you introduce or don't introduce.
Now, please,
why reintroduce?
I think that the governing body has that right to listen to all the comments, consider those comments, and then make a determination. That's only fair. You know that, Judy.
Correct, and that's what I said. If you come out and make the determination that you're going to introduce the same ordinances, what we said...
They could, and maybe they don't.
Maybe they don't. Hopefully. Okay, that's another thing. Now, don't be fooled. These proposed or accepted ordinances and zone change will devalue your property. I was told of a property on Parsippany Road right now that was under contract, was to a seller. Maybe not under contract, it was being purchased. And they backed out because they heard that this was going to be rezoned for multifamily housing right next to that house. So are you going to go around and reassess everybody's property to devalue it? Just because it's not going to be built there doesn't mean this has an effect on that neighborhood. The houses on Parsippany Road that are right across it. If I came to town, I would search all the area around to see what was going on potentially in the future. And if I saw this already existed, I'd be very reluctant to buy the house next to it. So there's many, many more spots that are suitable for this overlay zone, which may or may not even have to be introduced. And it can easily be changed in the court case, which comes up in January, from this area to another area. Another thing is it's only going to be 106 COA units. As Mr. Ferriola had said, why doesn't the town build those COA units? Build them over by the Wegmans. Then we have 106 with all the children that come from 106, not 5 times 106. And thank you for your attention.
I'm not going to answer on the basis of what that would cost from a tax impact. Rob Cobain. Bobby, where are you?
Robert Cobain Jr., 61 Kearney Avenue. Most of you know Cobains have been in the township for almost 70 years. I want to echo a lot of what everybody has said. I grew up in the woods, hunted in the woods when it was allowed to hunt in town and stuff like that. But I do want to question more of what Ms. Irati was just asking. What other properties were looked at? Were the open land next to the Birchwood looked at? Was the open land next to the Vets Field across the street, which used to be the town dump? Why wasn't that looked at? How about the end of Eastman's Road, where it starts in Parsippany but ends in our town? There's woods there you can knock down versus the beautiful woods that we have right there.
Mm-hmm.
What about where Route 24 was supposed to extend over into Morris Plains?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we use that? Why can't we use the city woods? You know, we have so many people living there in tents behind the Cedar Knolls Mall. Why can't we use those woods and those areas? America's best value. But really, why weren't those areas looked at, or were they looked at, and can you talk to those?
It's the Township Committee and its consultants have examined. You want to answer?
Yeah, I think.
Let me say one thing on Route 24, because I'm very proud of the fact that we're trying to add to our open space trust fund here in Hanover Township. Route 24 is very close to being acquired, all 68 acres of that track, and that will go in perpetuity into open space, and we're trying to do that with other thanks, Lenny.
Which is absolutely
and
wonderful.
knows what I'm trying to do. We've got over 900 acres now. We're going to add to that, quite honestly, in open space. We're not forgetting open space. The only trouble with Hanover Township right now, I'm making a statement, I want to get off my podium in a second, is that to acquire open space in our town, we have to acquire the land, and we're turning developed land back into open space. And that's one of the biggest arguments I've had before the county Open Space Preservation Trust Fund. Hanover and other towns have to take back lands that have been developed to convert it, you know? So we're
I guess one property too I wanted to add. I know you mentioned the Bear property earlier too. Why wasn't that? Why can't that be part of that? Because that's wide open over there. That was developed. That was all knocked down. It's all pavement now, or broken up pavement. That could be made part of it.
Well, like the Bear property, I think there's a concern that could turn into a very significant residential development. And with respect to the
which
other
is different
properties,
than what's proposed.
I'm sorry.
Which is different than what's being proposed here.
Well, I'm saying there's more acreage there that's
Right.
suitable, and it's also for sale and things of that nature. I'm not saying that this is the solution, but that property.
Wait. You're saying that the Bear property is better suitable, but we're not going with that?
That could be correct. I think
All right. So the Bear property is more suitable. Thank you. All right. Can we talk about the other properties, please?
there was a list of open space, or as the planner said, oversized type lots that which the township engineer and the township planner looked at, and the consideration was along the lines of, well, let's find the properties that would be challenged. Now, I'm not saying that means we have the right answer, but that was the goal. And as far as taking the information and what we're hearing tonight to go into executive session, it's only because we have this litigation that's ongoing. So if there's going to be a discussion about these comments, I'm making up an example. Let's say one member of the township committee says something like, hey, I don't want to do what Fair Share wants us to do. I don't want to do what we've committed to do. I want to understand our legal options. If we don't, maybe everyone here would like to really hear that, but that would be on the record, and that would be something used against the township in the litigation. So we need to have, as Mr. Giorgio said, an executive session to discuss those legal options and based on the comments that we've heard tonight. That's what we're going to do, and discuss things as you've mentioned about other properties and those type of comments, and to see where we can go and come back out and try to get some direction from there.
I guess also, too, I know it's been said as well, not being notified of what's going on. Thank you, whoever put the flyer in my front door. That's the only way I know it. But, to the point being, I know you might not have to do that, but if someone comes in front of the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board to put an addition on their house, they have to contact the 200-foot abutters list. Something like that should have been done, or some kind of notification. So that's all. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah. Is Mary Connor still in the room? Mary? There you go.
Good evening. My name is Mary Salka Connor. I think I have a lot of people beat here. My family has been in Hanover Township for over 100 years. I myself, 64 as of tomorrow. If we're here a little longer, it'll be then. My father sat up on the Township Committee with many of you. I am here to represent him and also my grandchildren. I now have 5 generations of the Salka family in Hanover Township. The reason why everybody has stayed here and bought here and invested in this town is because we felt it was an investment. What is happening right now is worrying me beyond belief. I'm close to retirement. I could pick up, sell my home and go. But I have children and now grandchildren that are thinking about having the open space that I knew. I swam in the Brickyard Pond. Maybe we weren't supposed to, but I did. What is now Trail Woods was my little area to go through. I went and I fished behind here in the river. This was a wonderful town. We were all invested because we were homeowners. We were not renters. We were not in multi-units. There is a different flavor that comes when you have, I went through my head and counted up multi-units in this township, including senior citizen, rentals, and I came up with 15. The land on Park Avenue and Whippany Road, I stood here at a meeting. We were told, we left the meeting told that it was going to be individual cluster homes. I drove to work one day, looked over, and I said, whoa, it's condos. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. My daughter came here when they were talking about multi-families and talked about possibly getting Green Acres to be the track near on Eden Lane. So our kids would have stewardship of what it means to have a community. I went to Cedar Knoll School. We no longer own Cedar Knoll School. Calais School used to be part of our community. We no longer own that. Our schools are getting maxed. These units do not bring 1 or 2 children, they bring 4. We have to start to think our school system is going to be taxed. Where are we going to put new schools? When I went to Hanover and Whippany Park, we were very populated at the time, and we had to do split sessions. It was horrible. So I'm just begging you, really think. Know that there's people up there. Mike Salka's looking down and saying, what are we thinking? We have to think a little bit different. There are people in this room that really care. I know there are many others that now have little children that can't get here. But we have people that do care. We want to keep Hanover Township being in the community that it's been and not running. We want to stay, not run. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, I was proud to serve with your dad, I will tell you that. Laura O'Brien. Laura, you in the room? Go ahead.
Hi, Laura O'Brien, 33 Sunset Drive. My biggest concern that I heard was the fact that all the homeowners were not given any notice. And I guess my question is, how can any other homeowner in Hanover feel comfortable that that's not going to happen to them in the future.
I can only say this, that to the extent that we are meeting all our requirements of transparency, we've gone beyond it, and we will continue. But can we mail a notice? Can we mail newspapers home to everybody who may or may not read a newspaper? Can we put registered letters in 13,500 and something odd homes? There's a point of practicality.
I don't think anyone's asking for 13,000 homes. I think they're just asking for the abutting homes.
If they're, and I think we agree. I think we agree that I can't talk to. Who is speaking? I can't. Who is speaking? Is that Mr. Eamon?
Eamon, pardon. It went viral. I started handing them out. Other people started making copies and passing them out.
Mr. Eamon, I wish, sir, I wish you would respect the protocol and use the podium. That's your area. That's your the podium goes back to you, madam. Go.
Well, I guess my question is, I understand that 13,000 mailings might have been difficult, but why was it too difficult to do the abutting properties?
I wish I could answer that. I have no answer for you.
Aren't you the person who would be responsible for that?
Am I responsible for
You're
that?
the mayor, right?
I'm a committeeman.
You're a
I'm
committeeman.
I'm the chairman of this committee. Each one of these gentlemen have equal votes to myself.
Okay, so you're telling me that I cannot expect a notice if anything is changing about my property as a resident of this town, and that no one in this town should ever have a feeling that they should receive notice?
I think the law says there are circumstances where that can happen, but what happened tonight is the governing body came out, and one of the reasons why they wanted to withdraw the ordinance is, even though it's a permitted process to do that, there was a concern about the fact that that may not, that's something that needs to be evaluated going forward. That may not be the best way to make these type of changes, even if the law permits it. So one of the reasons for tonight, on top of other things, for the withdrawal of the ordinance really wasn't a comfort level from a standpoint of the notification, to your point.
I know, and then my other question is, that's my other thing. If a resident had not looked at the notice in a non-local newspaper, which I understand met the legal requirements, but if someone hadn't by chance seen that, you wouldn't have a crowded room, and I'm guessing you probably wouldn't have gone into private session to talk about it and not passed it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, are people from not town residents allowed in this session?
I'm sorry?
Are people that aren't from this town allowed in this room?
Sure.
Can't exclude anybody.
No.
Okay.
Jason Grasson? Grasson? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, Jason Grasso, 41 North Jefferson Road. I was born in this town. I've lived in this town my entire life. I purchased my first home in this town. I have children that go to school in this town. I'm appalled by what's going on here. I don't understand why you guys are going ahead with this. I'm wondering why you guys need to go into a private legislative session. It seems like you're shocked by the turnout and by the people here and our reaction to it.
I'm willing to have an open session right here, sir, but that's up to council. But having said that, go ahead. I interrupted you.
I don't want this to happen. I don't think anybody in this room wants this to happen. And as my representative, I want you to vote no against this. Hell no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's up to Fred what he wants to do.
Yeah, council, at this point, we've heard from public, everyone on who wished to speak. Is there anyone else? By the way, floor is open, and regardless of these yellow sheets in front of me, if there's anyone that feels they've been ignored or that would like to make a comment, I'm happy to recognize you. Would you raise your hand? Sir, give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Orlando Soto, 39 Washington Avenue. I'd like to propose that in the future, when any of these developments are going to occur, that, as the young lady said, any abutting properties be notified by flyer, because I had no idea until the gentleman came to my door, and developments right behind in my backyard. So I'm glad he came, so I would be educated of what's going on. So I asked and I propose an ordinance in the future that if anything happens like this, the abutting residents would be notified. I only think that's fair. Thank you.
All right, once again, I said the floor remains open. Is there, oh, go ahead.
My name is Lori Tompkins White, 198 Cambridge Street. I'm here tonight with my father, Ken Tompkins, my brother, Kenny Tompkins, and my husband, Justin White, to address the rezoning proposal. Thank you to the committee for giving us a few minutes to express our concerns. As to notification of this meeting tonight, we were informed by our neighbors, who by chance happened to see in the newspaper, as one who will be directly impacted by the zoning reproposal, a formal letter from the town would have been appreciated. Therefore, we would like to thank our neighbors for letting us know. Our family history living on this piece of property dates back over 170 years. 6 generations of our family have or are still living on the property dating back to my great-great-grandparents. Myself, my husband, and our 2 young boys are living on the property and proudly call it home. I could not possibly list all the memories of generations from the last 170 years. We would like your support in order to continue living on this property as it was intended to be, a quiet residential neighborhood. We don't want to see our property, Block 8305, Lots 1, 701, and 8, be rezoned for affordable and/or multifamily housing. This is not just a piece of land to us. This is our family history and our home. We do not want changes made to it. Making these drastic proposals to our property would not only directly impact my family, but also our neighbors, as well as the wildlife that inhabits the area. Thank you for your time and careful consideration.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time...
There's one more gentleman.
Is there anyone else?
I think there's another
Is there another gentleman who wants to speak?
Two more.
I'm sorry, go right.
Three
Floor's
more.
still open. Name and address.
Hey, how are you? Michael Vertis, 187 B Meadow Parkway in Whippany. I just want to say I'm very proud of everybody that came out here today, and it really makes me proud to be a resident of this fine town. And I'm hoping that you guys do the same and make me proud to have such a wonderful council to represent us. This is clearly your voters, your constituents are saying no. And we expect that you guys follow suit and do the same. If we have to support you in this fight, I can guarantee you see the people here, they're ready to do it. They're ready to fight for it. We got your back. We want to make sure you do that. The other thing I wanted to ask, and I can go on and on echoing what everybody's talked about, but in the essence of time, I just had one question during this whole presentation. Why are these separated? Why is it one is AH2, one is AH3? What is the purpose behind separation?
Have our planner answer you.
Yeah, we wanted to differentiate between the age-restricted site and the non-age-restricted site.
Okay, just because when I was watching this, you paint a beautiful picture talking about the conclusion here, focused on AH2, saying how it's undesirable, it's not going to be developed. But the truth of the matter is, when you're looking at AH3, that's a beautiful piece of land to be developed. It's like gift wrapped. So it's almost like we're getting both passed, and on the premise that this is not going to happen. But it is. That other one is beautiful. I mean, it looked like it was 30 acres with only one of them not being usable. So I just wanted to, could this be together if you're going to try to put it? That way they would have to clean up this and then, look at the other one and keep it one and the same instead of making one easy?
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not connected. So therefore, we couldn't physically connect them in that manner. So could you zone one site to require another site to be cleaned up? I'm sorry.
All right, well, then I'll have to ask that you consider please looking at other areas because this just doesn't make sense for the town, for the residents, and for our well-being. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Mary, you want to say something?
Yeah. Real quick, I just wanted to add, has the township started to think about ways to make different companies want to stay here or come here? I see a lot of vacant buildings, the industrial places. Are we trying to give them maybe a cut or a break in some way? Because my concern is with the way the roads are, because I live near Ford Hill Road, and that is, if there's, I can't get out of my development. If I owned a business, if I was a big bear or something, I don't know if I'd want to be here because it would make it difficult for my employees to travel back and forth. So, we do now have MetLife, which is vacant. We welcome MetLife with signs, welcome to Hanover, but MetLife was already here. And now that's sitting there vacant, and it's just concerning me that that'll become a hotel. And there is no place for people to work or people to go and enjoy other than just live here. So I'm hoping that you're starting to consider that, possibly with Pine Plaza, if we had made something with the owner there so that his pricing would have been lower and people could have developed that, we would have had a place like I go down to Florham Park to go and eat. Because there's nothing really here for us to do, and that's also something that's concerning. So thank you very much.
We have just to give a parting comment, we have, in fairness to our Economic Development Advisory Committee, which has been meeting for the past 4.5 years, 5 years, and they've been working with our corporates on various issues that we've had, transportation being one of them. Barclays came in and is working with us. John's working with Trans Options to try and find solutions to move their passengers. Barclays actually uses their own buses.
Oh, I know. I'm behind it a lot.
Yeah, there you go. They have bicycles. We're looking at trails. We're looking at connectivity. We're looking at more ways to move people without being on the road. So until we get more mass transportation in the region, and that's what we're after most of our legislators for, the extension of the Lackawanna connection, etc. We're in this impact that is that.
But it's just to make it more appealing to them, so we don't have the vacant buildings that then they say, oh, there's a vacant building, now we can put housing there. I don't want to see that happen and it being rezoned to residential. And just making it so that people want to work here, stay here, and we have the community that we've all known. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, thank you all.
One more over there? And this gentleman.
I'm sorry.
Two more?
Can I just say it from here?
Why, you don't want to get up to the podium? No.
I really don't.
Shout out.
All right. You're all talking about the...
Well, who are you first?
Okay, I'm Donna Madsen, 5 Washington.
Okay.
You're all talking about vacant buildings. They just put on, right across the street from, like, Novartis, the Sycamore Living. I know it's assisted living, but it's age, it's for older people or people that are in trouble. And why can't they build your age-restricted houses in existing buildings that aren't being used? Instead of taking the precious land away from all these people, all the animals, all the trees, everything else that's involved with that beautiful piece of property that's back there, and our neighborhoods. And try to get out on Parsippany Road in the morning to go to work. I fear for myself every time I do it. That's all I have to say.
No, we have some more.
Go ahead. Gentlemen, come up to the podium. We can't hear you. Now who are you?
I'm Jim Geiser, 57 Washington Avenue. I'm proud of it. I want to say thank you for the dog walkers, because Doug, who was walking his dog, let me know about this. All right, because I'm retired. Yeah, I don't hear about this all. Okay, so I want to say one thing. I see my neighbors who have little kids growing up, riding their bikes, learning how to ride their bike.
Raise that microphone up to you. There you go.
Learning how to ride their bikes, but on a two-wheeler. All right. Over the years, I've lived in my house over 30 years. Those people that drive that road from Wilson to Washington I'm amazed there's not a death, okay? Because they come screeching around that road, all right, to have more buildings and apartments, more cars. Somebody's gonna get it, all right? I'm surprised they haven't. That's all I'm gonna say, okay? And my son's 36 years old. I made it through the tough times, all right? But, I have my neighbor here, I watch his daughter get on that bike, and it's like, that's so great, And the kids then think they can do it, and there's nobody there. They hardly ever see a cop, policeman. I know they're busy and they're doing that. Once in a while you'll see it, but anyway, I had to say something. Thanks.
Thank you. If at this time I'd...
One more gentleman. One more gentleman.
Oh, all right. Well, one at a time. Madam, go ahead.
Joyce Kruger, 18 Washington Avenue in Whippany. I have a 12-year-old daughter who supposedly has to walk to the junior school every day. There's no way that she can walk down Washington, down Wilson, down John Street. The traffic is unbelievable, and they do not slow down. What are we supposed to do? There's no buses because I'm told we live too far away. I'm sorry, too close. I'm very nervous that we live too close. Now you want to open up Wilson and have more traffic? What are our children supposed to do? And it's true. They ride their bikes on this road. There's no sidewalks. Our road has not been paved in 35 years. Apparently, there's not enough money to pave it. But how many times has Trailwood's been paved and the other roads have been paved? And again, thank you.
I fell through that street last year.
There's another gentleman that wanted the podium.
I wasn't going to talk tonight. Sean Gaynor, 74 Reynolds. I just think that nobody here wants us to go to executive session. Just let's be transparent. You say you want to be transparent. We all want to be transparent. Just whatever we're going to discuss, let's just do it in front of everybody. All right? I know you said it's for maybe legal reasons, but we're all here. Let's talk about it in front of everybody.
In the interest, unless there's any other pertinent comment that people like to make, I'm going to close this portion of the meeting, and I'm going to defer to council on the question of the discussion that the committee wants to have.
Yeah,
so first off, motion to close the floor.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, council, the question becomes one of executive session and quote, the back room, unquote. So please address that.
I would just like to ask to have a short discussion with the governing body to discuss the legal implications that I'm not permitted to discuss publicly, not because anybody in the room, but because there's fair share housing and a court and adversaries. But when the governing body comes out, I think they'll be able to, then they will let you know and they'll make a decision as to what direction they need to go in. I don't think we need long, but I need to explain to them some issues and answer a question or two that'll implicate us or affect us in the litigation that I cannot answer here in public. So I would ask, Mayor, if we could have a short executive session so that we don't have to wait till the next meeting and have one, and then the public won't have any answers. So if we could have a very
How much time, Counselor, do you think you're going to need?
I think if we had about 10 to 15 minutes,
Will the
Mayor.
public indulge us for 10 or 15 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion to recess.
All in favor? How are we doing?
Standing. I like it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the Township Committee in executive session deliberated on this matter. They took into consideration all of the comments that they've heard from you tonight. They feel they have a recommendation, and I'm going to let council go over that. Fred?
The recommendation, Mayor, is to withdraw all of the ordinances that relate to the land use and specifically the overlay zones, with the direction for the Township Committee to go back to fair share housing and to exhaust all efforts to find other locations or other solutions instead of these overlay zones. And instead of the ones that were discussed this evening, specifically the AH2 and AH3. And in addition, if by chance down the road these two zones are reintroduced, there will be personal notice to all residents within 200 feet of the zone if in fact it comes back. But at this point in time, the direction that I'm getting from the Township Committee with this vote would be to explore and exhaust all other alternatives as opposed to these zones. And that would be...
Thank you.
Mayor,
On that, do you need a motion?
Yes.
It would be a motion for ordinances 43, 2019, 44, 2019, 45.
No, just those two, Fred.
Those two right now?
Just those two.
Okay, right, because the other two, correct.
We're okay.
43, 2019, and 44, 2019. You're
And the
correct.
language for the motion would be?
43 and 44, right?
Correct.
43 and 44 only. Those are
Right,
the
they're
two overlays.
both of the overlay zones. They're the AH2 and the AH3 overlay zones. They would be withdrawn with the direction to explore any and all other alternatives as opposed to these two overlay zones. And in the event there was the reintroduction of these ordinances, the affected property owners within 200 feet, notwithstanding what the law says, the Township Committee would direct for notice to be personally served by mail to those residents.
I offer that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Francioli on the withdrawal of ordinance number 43-2019 and ordinance number 44-2019, and that motion has been seconded by Mr. Faramasca. And on roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Both ordinances are now formally withdrawn.
Before everybody takes off, excuse me, before everybody takes off, excuse me, I'd like to make a statement.
Yes, Doug, 50 will be amended, which I have to do. Yes.
Before everybody takes off, I'd like to make a statement. I'm from this town. I feel exactly the same way you do. This, for lack of a better word, COA, sucks. It does. We fight it nonstop. We've been fighting it. We're doing our best. Help us. Help us. There's a letter that you can sign. I'm going to pass these out. It'll go on Facebook. Send it to your governor, your assemblyman, your the Cody, assemblywoman.
Casey.
And send this out. You can still come and yell at us, but before you do that, send this, copy it. If we do it as a town, let's say 30 towns in Morris County send one letter, that's 30 letters. But if we have 30 towns, and those town members send 1,000, that's 30,000 letters. That's what's going to make this change. This is a constitutional issue in our government. It is a problem. We are up against the wall. What we're doing right now is going to be very risky. It may cost us more units. Know that. The thought behind, and stop me if I start talking too much.
No, Fred's fine.
Fred's not paying attention. I can keep going. My thought behind, you talk about you lived there for 170 years, you lived here for generations. This overlay, the intent was that you wouldn't sell. Rob, you asked why not another overlay? Because they will build there. It would happen tomorrow. we're going to try something. It's going to be risky, and it's probably going to cost us more units. My goal has always been the least amount of units. I was counting on my neighbors to say, I'm not selling. If you are one of those neighbors and you're considering selling, call the town. Let us know. Okay? Can I say that? Let us know. All right? Let us know. I would love to put this into our open space. I'd love to expand Beeb Meadow Park. I would love to. I've talked to dozens of you. I would love to see a small camping area. We've got a path that's going in. You know, we'd love to see this as that type of a use. But we need your help too. We need your help. We're going to get this out on Facebook. Is Linda still here? There you are. Linda's going to help Annie's out. We're going to get this out on Facebook.
Some people are not on Facebook.
Ask me. I'll give out my email address. You can find it.
If you're not on Facebook, God bless you.
Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, not just in our town. This is a statewide issue. Okay? Please, get the word out.
Thank you. Good, John.
Good night, everybody.
Very good. Take care, John. Very good. Very good. It went well. I think. But this is. But you know,
I don't want to risk anything. Don't risk it.
Hey, stay a Republican.
Today? We need to go back into. I like your story still. Text me now. Message. We're going to get this done. We got to make some noise down there. Cody and that. I mean,
That's the attitude of sports, but
you have to finish up. Listen. Thank you. Dylan wants to shake your hand.
And now my second dog is learning to drive.
Long night.
You're soft, all right?
Long night.
My in-laws were the sale. Oh, sure. Sure.
Oh, my God.
What about my life?
To get there?
The gavel. You want a gavel? I'm out.
Gentlemen, we have a meeting to continue.
Okay, guys.
So you have a little more work to do. We don't want you to stop now. We gotta stay busy, right?
We're gonna work it out. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna work it out.
I gotta get the agenda.
We'll fight the fight.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Restraint is the key. Howie, were you the one that blurted out some comment into my open? You did. I forgive you.
We have to listen.
raised our children here, lived here. I've been here all my life. I'm not going to give up the best town in North You've got to get the attention of the legislators. You got to change it. I've been through three different iterations of this since 1982. You've got to change that. We'll be here again in 2025. If they have another allocation for us in 2025. So this don't go away. Unless they legislate. Get off my soapbox. Well said. Well said.
No, I just don't want it. I want everybody to be all right. You know, I didn't know what it meant. Really? Yeah, no, because that's for the committee. You know, no, I'm happy. Believe me, if they're happy, I'm happy.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah, we got a lot to do. We'll do it. That's funny though. Yeah, I didn't realize that too.
So many issues with traffic, so many issues with other impacts. But then you look at all the damn building that they're doing down at Florence Park, the new facilities and all, everything that's going on down toward Madison. We're getting all that damn traffic. Because we got the highway, you know? Where? Those are two new restaurants that are going up there.
Hey, over, how are you?
After 287, on that side, two restaurants. Capital Grill, and a Season 52. Good. They're going in there. And then Wendy's is going to have a Panera Bread.
Comprehended what Mike has to do. That's what's peaceful. That's New Jersey is killing that.
They were here.
I got to collect these guys. They got to go back into session. I'm all right. They go back into session. Oh well. Gentlemen, committeemen, Brian, Michael.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to finish our meeting. If you would please conduct your business outside, ladies and gentlemen.
If you guys don't go home, we're going to reverse
We have
ourselves.
to finish our meeting, please.
Hanover Township.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Thanks for coming out.
Okay,
Joe, where
ladies
am
and
I?
gentlemen, as we continue with the agenda, we have one item of communication, the submission of the resignation of Class 3 Special Law Enforcement Officer John Keimer, effective Friday, November 8th, 2019. May we have a motion to accept the letter? Motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. So approved. We have the approval of the minutes of the Township Committee regular meeting of October 10th, 2019. May we have a motion for approval?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
On departmental reports, rather than go through, I'm just going to say they're all available for public inspection in my office. And at this time, we will now continue with the public hearing and consideration of adoption of the following ordinances. Ordinance 40-2019, ordinance number 41-2019, ordinance 42-2019, ordinance 45-2019, ordinance 46-2019, 47-2019, 48-2019, 49-2019, and 50-2019, which will require amendment to delete the two overlay zones. So at this time, is there anyone in chambers wishing to be heard concerning any of the ordinances that appear on the formal agenda that are now for public hearing and consideration of adoption?
Hearing none, motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
Hang on, time out. Ms. Baird has a...
Oh, here we go.
Terry Baird, 180 Parsippany Road, in the Whippany section of Hanover.
Which ordinance, Terry?
In reference to 42?
Yes, okay.
Okay, I just wanted to congratulate you on bringing this forth because this is a very important matter, and there were a lot of people who were very concerned about how pilot monies would be dispersed. And I do understand from other people in other towns that I don't know of any other town that is doing this. So I'm hoping that you setting this precedent will also help other towns to take this on, because this is a very important aspect of how our funding happens in our town. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Are there any other comments from any members of the public concerning any of the ordinances for public hearing? Yes, sir.
Real quick. Doug Eamon, 48 Washington Ave. On the ordinance with the allocations, just running some of my own numbers through the Rutgers study and the New Jersey demographics multipliers, and using the available information that's been published on the town website, I've come up with counts of, I'll just say 400 plus. Rutgers is actually closer to 500. The New Jersey demographics multipliers is about 450. When coming up with these allocations, what studies or analysis was done to, I guess, determine if it's enough with that many students coming in, based off some of my research I've done from public comment and past meetings that would require a new school. I know Senator Sweeney in the state legislature had proposed merging school districts for those that already had a merged high school. If you can share any information at this point in time as far as what plans are being laid to address that influx of students. I know our town planner, Mr. Brancheau, in the past has indicated a ratio of 0.13, but based on the numbers I'm seeing from the Rutgers study and the New Jersey demographic multiplier study, I'm not overly confident in that 0.13, and just recently, I believe, in Short Hills in the last week or two, there was an article where the developer building a unit there had ratios closer to in line with both of those studies. So my question is related to the ordinance on the allocations. How do we come up with those amounts, and are there any plans being laid now to help address the influx of students that we're going to see from these developments? Thank you.
I'll just answer a little bit of it, if you want me to. The amounts, what we did was we just, from the pilot, we just took what we get from our real tax money and transferred it to the pilot.
Okay.
So what is it, 37 or 38% to the K through 8, 17, 18% to the regional high school, 16% to the fire. So we just took all of that, and instead of putting faith in the future governing body here and hope they would care about the children as we do, we wanted to memorialize our thought process, and with that type of pilot coming in, we wanted to distribute it exactly how we distribute real tax money. So we just took one sheet and put it on the other sheet. And as far as projections, there are a lot of different projections. I just spoke to the superintendent at a high school yesterday as co-liaison with Committeeman Cahill. Our K through 5s are the most crowded schools in our town. There's a little bit of room in the MJS. There's a little bit of room in a high school. We're all concerned. In a perfect world, like Committeeman Mahalko said, we wouldn't want to have this type of development, period. In my first 5 years on the Township Committee, we approved 24 units. And it wasn't until this came down, and came down hard with the deadlines and all the triggers and the pieces that we had to meet. So I just want you to know there is going to be money coming in. Is it enough? I doubt it. Are we probably going to have to build some classrooms if your numbers are close? Probably. When we did speak to the state about the pressure this was going to put on us Their simple answer was, this is progress. So we know we're going to, the police issue we talked about countlessly, our services we talked about countlessly. The schools we're really focusing on, because I moved here for the schools for my children, as do many people, as I think you said the first time you were here.
Absolutely.
My mother taught in these schools for 30 years. We were always hanging around in this town, although we didn't live here. So as far as those numbers, we're getting a bunch of different numbers. We're communicating with the schools at all times. They're bracing for a worst-case scenario. We do have a classroom size of second grade and down 22, third grade and up 24. All of those in different grades, it's where the kids get plugged in. So I want you to know that many, many times when we talk about the schools, me and Committeeman Cahill served on the Board of Education and we served on the Board of Ed together. This is very near and dear to our heart, and our schools are great schools. And we're going to do everything we could to make sure they stay as good as they are or get better, because the last thing I'll say is if we expect more out of our services, but they have to provide service to more people, the services are then less. So that parallel and maybe increasing is what we're going to try to do. And with dispersing that pilot money that way and not having 5 other people up here without the same passions as us, at least we know X amount of money is going to go to the school, which is going to offset costs.
Okay. It's reassuring to hear that you are reaching out to the schools, class sizes, and evaluating that, and that some progress is being made there.
To be honest with you, I talk to Mr. Wasco, the superintendent of K-8, once a week.
Okay.
And Maria Carroll's the new superintendent. I speak to her once a week. And they're both on our the New Jersey Coalition for Education and Positive Choices. So I serve on different things with the superintendents besides the liaison with Mr. Cahill to the schools. So we're always communicating.
Is something the town would consider merging high schools with East Hanover, with Hanover Park,
That was
and
discussed-
shifting some of those schools?
That was discussed quite a bit, and that was also a great idea a couple different times with people campaigning for the Board of Ed, the high school Board of Ed. But the debt is incredible. The busing is incredible, because if you notice, all the buses say Hanover Park, they're all parked in, so their partnership is incredible, and for us to take on that kind of debt, and it comes down to debt.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
Mr. Eman, could you help me out in one area? You refer to the Rutgers study, and you refer to some specific data from the study that's giving you the counts. Can you point me to that?
Yeah, I can share my calculations. You want me to send it to Mr. Giorgio tomorrow? I'm happy to review my calculations with this.
Well, you took your calculations from this particular study.
There's numbers in there. There's multipliers based
Well,
on
that's what I'm asking for some assistance with.
Oh, yeah, I read all the numbers using their calculations in there.
I see.
They have a top line number in there, and then there's a lower level calculation when you start getting into the transportation stops and all these other variables. That's a little more complex. Full disclosure, I used the top level number because I didn't have the information to calculate with the transportation stops on it. So I did use the top line number, but I did break it down. I accounted for the senior units at Pine Plaza. So I accounted for it. The only development I didn't have bedroom counts for was Whippany Village, but there is, within that study, if you don't have bedroom counts, you can use a general multiplier based on number of units, and I use that. The New Jersey demographics multipliers study goes about it a little bit different when you look at the numbers.
And they're referring to that in this report.
I don't have my glasses, I'm sorry. Is it okay if I approach?
Of course it is.
Yeah, there's two. One's a little bit older than the other one. There's one, it's called, I'm sure Mr. Brenshaw is familiar with the demographic multipliers. It's from 2006. It was done by a couple different firms. Rutgers was also involved with that one.
There was a more recent one that they looked at rental housing.
It's a different study than this one. I can provide it. It's available.
I have the studies as well.
You do?
Yeah, but just so you know, our projections were based upon actual counts from inclusionary housing developments.
Yeah, but from existing actual counts of inclusionary, and then you forecast out.
And then, yeah, and just so you know, those counts we did twice. Once about 13 years ago, and that came up with .14 per unit on average. We did it a year ago, I think it was, 2 at the most, and it came out at .13. So over that period, it's very constant. The Board of Ed has also done a projection, and their consultant, nothing to do with me, used a multiplier of .12 per unit. So between 3 different things, a very close thing has been done. But there's great variation. When I was doing this for Ridgewood, we did the same thing at Ridgewood. Ridgewood was higher than Rutgers. So it really depends on the municipality.
But you're also taking into consideration trends of school population up or down.
Well, yeah, there is the aging of the population. We're also looking at trends in household size overall, which have been declining for the last 30 years. People aren't having as many kids as they used to have, so that's part
true.
of the factor as
Yeah.
well. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but we felt the most reliable was looking at Hanover Township. Because most of the multifamily housing in Hanover Township is a result of Mount Walker. I think it was Mrs. Connor who said at one point she counted 15 units. We've now got like 1,500 in Hanover Township. Most of those came about as a result of Mount Laurel. Not only that, the Mount Laurel we have today, most of that is 20% affordable. Whereas most of what we're looking at in our current obligation is going to be more in the way of 15% affordable.
Okay, all right.
What's significant about that is affordable units generate more kids on average than non-affordables. And what I'm saying is if the existing developments with 20% affordables is generating .13, the developments with 15% fewer affordables is likely to be similar or even less than what we already have.
Well, I'm just trying to make a point that we examine in order to get to this calculation. I mean, there was a concern that we have not looked going forward to where we are with the school versus what we've got.
We have, but obviously you can look at the numbers 6 ways upside Sunday. The bottom line, however, is that the court said whether it's 200 kids, whether it's 500 kids, you still have this obligation.
Well,
if you have to build schools, build schools.
I'm with you.
That's what the court's going to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Only comment, real quick on that, sorry, is with that .13, it doesn't, the information that was available that Terry had provided through Oprah request doesn't give.
Yeah, I gave out that information.
Yeah, it doesn't give a breakdown by bedroom.
No, it doesn't.
Did it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so to be able to run it through those studies, you need to know the number of bedrooms. So if there is a high number of 1 million units in that
I'm
count,
sorry.
it could be deflating that number to .13.
I guess what I'm saying
as an example of Willows, right? I don't want to use an extreme case, but I'm just making a point. The Willows is at a point, I believe, 5.4 per unit ratio. You get a lot more students from the Willows. When you look at the Rutgers study, you have to look, is it low rise, is there commercial space underneath it? It's a lot more detailed study. I went through, I plugged the numbers in, it comes up with that number. I'm concerned that each meeting I keep hearing that is this lower deflated number. I get it. And just a week or 2 ago, when I saw the number from Short Hills that fell from the developer, what they're expecting students, that fell more in line with the Rutgers study, it just makes me concerned on how accurate this, I get what it is, that is .13, right? And at the same time, I know a lot of, as older residents move out, you have a lot of families here. It's families that are moving into town, right? Families are having less kids. But as the older residents move out, you have more kids coming in as well. I do think it will come out, in my opinion, more to be the point higher than the .13. And even if it is the .13, as you mentioned, the K-5 schools, they're pretty maxed out. So even if it is .13, something will need to be done to address it. I'm happy to hear, right, that there's conversations, exploring some options, right, class size, looking at it. So I think as well as the public hears there's some progress and it's being addressed. Look, we don't have the units yet. There's still some time. But I can tell from talking to the public, what we don't want to see is trailers. Now, I know Councilman Cahill, I think you were in trailers. I think that came up in September at some point.
I never said that. I'm surprised you know that. I was, but I never said that.
And my mother taught in trailers, and she taught Committeeman Cahill.
In trailers?
In a trailer.
That explains it. Well, when they were probably doing an improvement.
We were building classrooms. MJS was one addition after another.
Residents in town were in trailers as well. Everyone says it wasn't a pleasant experience. People don't move into town when they know their kids are going in trailers, even if it's for a year or two.
But just to button up the conversation.
Please. I know the township has more business to conduct, and this is more discussion. This is more discussion for the planning board and in that area.
And just like Committeeman Mahalko said, we were told by the state this is how it's going to be, and we negotiated as hard as we could to get it to an acceptable rate, at least the best we could have done. And when we did discuss this, they told us it was progress. One time, I told them about the stress it was going to have on the school budget. They said, you don't have to worry about that, you're municipal. I said, but I pay all the taxes. I pay fire, I pay regional, I pay KT-Wait. So to make a long story short, they put it here and said, guys, sort it out. Here's how it's going to be. So when we're talking, I hope Blaze is right. I'm kind of a doubting Thomas. I kind of don't really believe that many people and too much of the stats because it can go any which way. But you know what? We're just doing the best we could, like they say in Scouts. Be prepared. And the communication couldn't be better. Since we started working on this exercise, constant communication with everybody.
Mr. Administrator.
Jim, you have a comment?
Hi, everybody. Linda Oaks, 39 Courtright Road, Whippany. I just wanted to...
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to really quickly thank ACE and the Town Council for putting together the Ordinance 42 with separating out the pilot money and making sure that the schools and the other areas do get funded properly. Like, obviously, we've had way too many conversations, and we don't need to rehash it, but I just want to thank all of you for listening to my concerns and acting on it. So, thank you all. I realize you guys have a really hard job, and I know that, you know, a lot of times you're not appreciated, and I do appreciate the work you do. I might not always agree with you, but I do appreciate the work you do, and, you know, thank you for listening to me, and thank you for, you know, at least trying to do something good with that.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Jim.
Jim Neidhart, 3414 Appleton Way, Whippany. I'll make it brief because I know it's late. I remember a few meetings back that Mr. Eman had asked a question about whether any studies had been done and why they weren't done and why we were agreeing, or you guys were agreeing, to a fair housing agreement without having done that study. I think it's becoming more apparent that studies are very expensive. When a township committee does a study, they can't just do a spreadsheet and get some input. They need to hire professionals to do a study. And my understanding, tell me if I'm right or wrong, those studies usually cost like $50,000 or more. And I think that the concept of reducing our required units from 950 to 550, I think you can do a back of the envelope type of calculation that tells you 550 is a whole lot better than 950. It's going to be less. So if we can get an agreement to get it to 550, that's a good thing. I think an expensive study is going to be necessary at some point, and you're going to have to spend that 50. But my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, there's still a lot of things that are up in the air. Certain developments that may or may not get developed. Until you get a little further down the line and things are a little more solid. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just making an assumption.
No, I think you're on the right track, Jim.
That you can make certain decisions, like to go from 950 to 550, and that's a good decision in any, any way possible, if those are the only two alternatives. And you're going to have to spend the money at some point. When might that study, what needs to take place before a study like that?
I think that's going to be a requirement on site plan review. that we might be asking for those studies at that time.
But aren't these developments going to happen at separate times?
Until we know we can only make a supposition as to what a Pine Plaza is going to be. But until they come in, as you know, with a site plan on this thing, and we know exactly what they're doing with the units and so forth, then I think that demand of a study would probably be requested at that time, you know. And by the way, when I say requested, it's not necessarily that developer does the study. We would request the funding for a study that we would engage as the township. That's the way we've done it in the past, you know. But yeah, we would have to probably get more information.
Okay, and the other thing is related to the decision you made today to not just withdraw those two overlays, but to actually try to move in a direction different than that so that didn't happen. I know a lot of people made comments, and apparently you listened to that. I think it's a good thing. I was surprised. You know, that takes a lot of guts to make a decision like that. There are consequences and risks that were brought up. I hope that this is the best route, and I hope that the risks aren't too severe. I mean, I don't know, and you guys don't know, but you know, sometimes there's unintended consequences that have costs that are really big, and you got to counterbalance those. And good luck.
There's never been a better time than now for the governing body to work closely with the Board of Education and the trends that are going on right now. There's never a better time. Now that we're impacted by all of this going forward, we're getting closer to understanding the nature of the beast, if you will. But and it's crystallizing. But I think communications between both our governing bodies, be it the Board of Ed and us, has to really stay very tight, close on this to know.
But you're right, Jim. This is going to cost us. It's going to cost us more units.
Yeah, but, you know, maybe that's the right thing. Maybe it's the right thing.
Maybe.
Who knows? But
time will tell. We're discussing units, and you're concerned about the number of children coming in. Well, we just add more because of fear, and it could cost us severely. It's risky.
It's going to be difficult. I think
you're not going to get tarred and feathered.
I think there were a couple of residents. I know Mr. Eamon volunteered to bring additional information to you. He seems like he's very analytical. He's very passionate. He's a good researcher, and the tonality, I think, is moving in the right direction. I would encourage you, if he offers to bring you information, you know, maybe you set up a subcommittee or something. You know, if Blaze might want to be involved. You know, if he's doing this type of research, I think it's worth considering and adding that, you know, have it be additive to your current thinking. It can only help. You know, I've encouraged Mr. Eamon to present things in the most positive way. I remember in my early days, I came here loaded for bear. And over time, I got to see the process, learn the process a little better. So if you work with them a little more, you know, in subcommittees and things like that, you get to understand a little more of the process. And I think you'll understand that the motivations of some of the people here are very much in line with the residents. And I think to the extent that we can all work in a constructive way together, I think we're moving towards that direction. I think the township is trying to be more transparent. I'm going to push you to be even more transparent.
We're doing all we possibly can in spite of forces at hand.
This is a tough challenge. This is a very, very tough challenge. And I know that you guys work behind the scenes and do lots of work on this. And sometimes the residents don't always see the different stakeholders that are involved and who has leverage and what you can say in public and what you can't. And it's a tough balancing act, but God bless you guys, and thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other public comment?
I just want to take this opportunity, not on this ordinance, but because I want to go home, and I know you got to stay, but I'm really proud of our township committee because you listened to the people and made that decision. I really am. And I didn't expect it to go that way. You surprised me, but I'm really proud that the way everything turned out, and I just wanted to let you know. Thank you very much.
You're going to remember you said that, Lenny. We're going to remember you said that.
It's a Hail Mary, and it could cost us.
Hi, Judy Irati, 43 Locust Drive, Cedar Knolls. I wanted to comment on Mr. Neidhart's comment and Mr. Mahalko saying that he thinks that this will cost us more units. But if we had specified 106 units could be built over on Parsippany Road, and now the Township Committee says 106 units, which was only required, could be built, I'll pick out of the air, over by Mac Cali. How can we be jeopardized?
It's going to be more.
Because?
It potentially will be more.
Okay, well, maybe you know something that I don't.
We're opening a can of worms and we don't know where it's going to go.
Maybe.
But my point was, what I was banking on...
I'd rather about the decisions made tonight, you know, we have certain avenues and channels now we have to go, so I don't want to speculate or say anything.
Sure.
Because it'll be used against us.
Right.
You know, it will. So I don't want to say anything right now. I know what everybody's thought process is.
So I'll just make a remark. I don't see how the state could penalize us if we're in fact still giving them 106 units. It's my own opinion, but we don't know what the state is up to. Anyway, I have a question, and it always makes me smile when I read it. And it is in 42, Ordinance 42, and it says, and also are known as payment in lieu of taxes or pilot, which shall be dedicated to the taxpayer relief. Well, it's taxpayer money. What else would it be dedicated to? Just my comment.
You're asking where the relief is?
The taxpayers. If it wasn't for the taxpayers, this money, I don't know where else that money would be going. Okay. Other thing is, I know that the COA, has its, it mandates us to do certain things, and I know that the Pine Plaza and Eden Lane were set up to accommodate these, which is fine. But I just want to go on record and saying I am opposed to the pilot program on the 827 market value units in Eden Lane. I could see a pilot program. A pilot program doesn't pay 100% of the taxes
No, it doesn't.
on that unit. It pays a certain percent, but it's not 100. You have 827 market unit rentals that now the developer is going to get a reduced tax payment on. I just don't see how that can happen. Like I said, COA, seniors, because you're not getting the full value back from that unit when you rent it, but other market values. And I hope that there's going to be some kind of developer's agreement or something that can work in our favor along those lines. Think so?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fred, a lot of the percentages on the taxes are set by the rules on the pilot, and of course,
they are.
It's 85% of tax.
They are. I mean, some of the good things are that, when it does all come together, there will not be certain municipal services, which will be a savings. There won't be sanitation pickup or snow removal or maintenance. But on the other hand, it was, and also the commercial aspect will not be
No, that
subject
will not
to
be
a
on the
pilot as
pilot,
well.
right?
So, those are the pluses. But the rest of it,
So-
hopefully we'll be able to take a look at it when the time comes, because there'll be an ordinance to adopt the actual pilot, and hopefully at that time as well, we'll also, I would imagine we'll also, governing body will have projections to rely upon.
Okay, so you'll actually have
things.
projections in the study that the residents can look at?
Yeah, I would think there will be, about what the rents will be and what the expectation is about, what the payments in lieu of taxes would be, yes.
Okay, so perhaps the snow removal and what else was it? The
Sanitation service, yeah.
Perhaps by them picking that up, it might offset the lower payment
That'll
of
help.
taxes coming in. We don't know
Yeah,
until we see that
it'll
study.
help.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Thanks.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, any further comment? Seeing none, hearing none, may we have a motion to close on the public hearing on all the ordinances that we had for public hearing. Now on adoption, may we have a motion for adoption of all of those ordinances that we mentioned. We have a motion by Mr. Faramasca, second by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher. Aye. Mr. Faramasca. Aye. Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill. Aye. And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now we continue with the consent agenda on the ordinances for introduction. That's ordinance 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58. All of these ordinances will be heard for public hearing and consideration of adoption on the 12th of December at 8 p.m. here in the main meeting room. And at that time, any person wishing to be heard concerning any of the ordinances will be given the opportunity to speak. All of the notices and all of the ordinances and notices of introduction will appear in full in the daily record in accordance with law. So at this time, may we have a motion to approve the introduction of the ordinances as a consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Francioli, seconded by Mr. Faramasca. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca. Aye. Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now, resolutions, also as a consent agenda, items A through Q. Are there any questions from members of the governing body on any of the resolutions? Seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Faramasca.
Second.
Second by Mr. Francioli. On roll call to approve the resolutions as a consent agenda, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved. On the payment of bills, $8,644,410.69.
Motion to
We
approve.
have a motion by Mr. Francioli, seconded by Mr. Cahill. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca. Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Raffle applications also as consent agenda. Any questions about any of the raffle applications?
Move to be
We have
approved.
a motion by Mr. Faramasca,
Second.
second by Mr. Mahalko. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko.
Yes.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr.
To
Francioli.
pass on, aye.
So approved.
Pass on committee report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Township Committee, that clears the agenda of the Business Administrative
Thank
Township.
you, Joe.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. As indicated in the beginning of our meeting, I'll once again open the meeting to the public on this portion. So anyone who'd like to address the Township Committee on any subject may do so at this time from the podium, giving your name and address for the record.
Hi, Terry Baird, sorry, Whippany section of Hanover. In reference to the introduced ordinance 58, 2019, I know that it will be listed in the proposed ordinances on the website. However, will the redevelopment plan itself also be on the website, or is that something that I will have to Oprah request?
No, that'll be on the website as well. It's a very thick document. I think it's about 70 pages. Ed?
Yeah, about 70 pages.
We'll have that on the website soon.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of transparency, that's a big help because to Oprah request things should be available when you have these attachment documents.
Transparency is a good thing.
Yes.
Objectivity is even better. Floor remains open. Hearing none, seeing none. Motion to close.
So moved.
All in favor? Okay. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask your permission to forego
I have one thing
reports.
I have to say.
Do you?
I have one I have to, and this is very important.
Well, then, by all means, we're going to recognize...
Because this happens before our next meeting, so I want to make sure that everybody knows that Santa is coming to town on December 7th, Saturday, 2 to 4 o'clock at the rec center. So make sure you know, bring your children out, get a picture with Santa. There's always crafts and cakes and cookies. And
Sorry, speaking of Santa, Santa will also be at the firehouse November 30th for the lighting of the Christmas tree, so it's all over the place.
Oh, yeah. That's a good event.
December 7th, Saturday, December 7th, 2 to 4.
Very good. Any other no?
We'll save them.
You're going to save? Thank you.
We'll save them.
Joe, I think you had wanted to talk about scheduling.
I did want to ask the Township Committee, since we really don't have anything pressing for the November 25th meeting, and in keeping with tradition, last year the Township Committee canceled that meeting because of
Should we move it up?
So,
Is that what you want to do? You want to move it up?
Keep it going.
I'll make a motion that we cancel it for Thanksgiving purposes.
Okay.
Since the Township Committee has been working
rather hard.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Okay, we have a motion second on roll
Second,
call.
yeah.
Mr. Gallagher?
Aye.
Mr. Faramaska?
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko?
Yes.
Mr. Cahill?
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli?
Aye.
So approved, thank you. Mr. Samro?
Gentlemen, we're going to adjourn for conference.
Did you make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Just start.
I'm out.
Adjourn.
Start. Wind it up.
Jim?